Thank you for watching Fireside. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider liking and subscribing to be notified when future episodes release. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fireside. With us today, we have someone who, in many ways, helped pioneer the OSRS podcast space, someone known for their hot takes and hardcore Ironmen, a prominent voice in the skilling scene, and a general influencer and streamer. Sater, or as some call you, Sae Bae, welcome to Fireside.
Thank you so much. I love your intros, by the way. I gotta hand it to you. I've been brushing up on a lot of your recent podcasts, and I'm always impressed by the way you frame it. So thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. It's like the one scripted part of the podcast, so I got to like really write it out, summarize my guest in the best way I can.
I love it.
How you been?
I've been honestly good. I feel like I've been relatively busy comparatively to other months. I've started a new panel, uh, sort of like discussion panel talking about hot topics and other topics that the community has been focused on recently, and that's been keeping me occupied, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. And then, of course, got the hardcore series going on, and just doing my traditional old Sae Bae casts. So I don't know, I've been having a good time, and it's getting better weather, so that always improves my mood as well. So feeling great over here. How about you?
I'm good, and I was gonna say I like have been really loving hearing about and seeing these panel shows that you've been hosting because if people don't know, you kind of bring together a bunch of people, usually like maybe one or two content creators in the space as well. Like I know Josh was on one the other week, and like you kind of you pitch like three or four topics that are a bit of a hot button issue, a bit controversial, and you have them like essentially argue them, debate them. And as someone who grew up, I say grow up in a very loose way, around like the OG Twitch space, the OG Twitch streamer space, back when we had like things like Raj Royale and stuff, where a bunch of the
Yeah.
content creators would come together and just like debate and argue, and it was crazy. Not to say that this is as crazy as that. No one's calling each other slurs
Yeah,
or anything, but it's like gives me that vibe, that OG Twitch vibe, which I love. So I love that honestly.
yeah, it's been a cool project. I think initially I was thinking it was going to be more like heated debate style, and then the more I thought about it, it took me like 5 seconds of additional thinking, and I'm like, yeah, I don't imagine people are going to be that butthurt about something involving RuneScape, because this
You
is not like a political show or anything. Yeah, people are not going to die on most hills, so I feel like it ended up sort of just becoming this community sort of discussion based panel rather than like head to head arguments.
you just got to get some of the Twitter users to come in. You know, I'm sure they'll die on some hills there
Oh
for sure. You
God.
know,
Oh
yeah.
God. See, that's why I'm trying to get you on. It sounds like you're dying on some hills over on X. I've
Oh
gotten
my
off X
god.
recently,
No,
so
honestly,
I'm not
that's
seeing all the drama.
a very smart decision. Honestly, I I had my pop off tweet that got so much traction. I genuinely didn't expect it to get like a fraction of how attention that amount of attention or the kind of attention that it did. But you know, I'm as I mentioned a bit earlier, I have grown up, so to say, on like that internet in that internet space. So I don't really take it particularly personally, even when people take it really, really personally and get really upset over some of my
Yeah.
perspectives, which is totally fine. But I'm sure we'll touch on some of them. I'm guessing during this appearance from you because you know it's nice to have you on the show for the first time ever. And as someone who is known for giving their perspectives on things, you know, sometimes controversial, sometimes not, I figured we'd start off with the least hot button topic. And I just want to ask you how you feel about sailing now that it's come out and been out for like 6 or so months.
I'm glad you said 6 or so months. 6 or 7 months could have been
Oh, yeah, yeah,
easy
yeah, no.
rolled off the tongue. Yeah. No, that's good. Anyway, yeah, sailing. I've spent quite a bit of time doing sailing. I have specifically focused on certain activities in the skill. Salvaging obviously is a one that I've just spent. I mean, I got 99 sailing mainly through salvaging on Squat Cam, and then I've been playing my hardcore, and I'm 84 sailing on this account, and a lot of it's just been salvaging as well. But I have done the Barracuda trials, done a few courier tasks, but mostly in the early stages, so I didn't really get that big of inexperience with like the late game Giga Sweat strategies and stuff. But I love what they're doing there. I mean, the latest blog post, they're going to be giving loot crates or loot sacks out to doing courier tasks, which I think is just brilliant. And uh, I think deep sea trawling is super interesting too. I don't think it's perfectly implemented. I think there's just it feels a little rushed in some ways, and I understand they did have a time frame for releasing sailing. I know I've heard you talk many times on just boat combat, if that could have just been removed or just not even added yet and just focused on the other aspects of sailing, that could have been cool. I don't know if I fully agree with it, but I definitely see where you're coming from, and I don't think it would have been a bad thing necessarily. I just think in order for sailing combat to get in a good spot, we kind of need the whole player base to test the game because that's normally their protocol is just get every player to invest some time into it and mess around, and then they'll kind of make the necessary changes. So I'm optimistic that things can be changed and hopefully change for the better and just make sailing combat and other systems just work a little bit more fluidly because it just feels a little bit of a mechanical mess when you're doing boat combat. Um, but yeah, I would say how it's aged, I'm impressed with the skill because one of the tight ropes that I felt like Jagex had to walk was introducing a skill that has some incentive to train it, but doesn't feel like an obligation to train it. And I think they absolutely nailed it because there's just absolutely no need to go do sailing unless of course you want your max cape back. But other than that, I mean, you got like high level fish, which, is that extra push to go do it if you're an Iron Man and you want that high level fish. But other than that, it's like not much is being added other than like some farming patch islands and some other like bosses. I guess like Shellbane Griffin is part of that. But it all feels not essential. And I like that. I like that they did a really good job of just adding enough incentive to maybe do it if you care. So I like it overall. I'm a fan.
Yeah, I'd echo most of those like things. I think that when it comes to good incentives to do the skill, I think that sailing has that in a solid. It's solid. I wouldn't say it's like construction or magic tier insane. Like it's just objectively amazing to do it, but it's good in being a just released support skill like those other ones. I think that a lot of people say like, oh well, it's useless after like level 87, and I'm like, yeah, that is in fact like 95% of skills in the game. Yeah, you don't really get anything from doing them past that level unless they're like a combat skill. I mean, I don't know what most skills really drop off in value the deeper you go into them. So it's expected that sailing is the same way. I'm hoping that they fill that gap in. I'm hoping we get
Hmm.
more like late game sailing stuff as well. But for now, I think their goal and I think their polls and all this kind of stuff like further validates this. Their goal should be to really enhance what's there right now. As you mentioned, combat. I'm very mixed on. I mean, no, I'm not mixed. I'm negative about combat, but seeing them like try to fix it and all that is good. I'm happy for that happening. I just feel like combat on its own could have. I'd rather have had a bit less in sailing if it meant the things that we got were a bit more strong. As you pointed out, trawling is like one of the coolest methods for cross skilling in the game, in my opinion. But it's incentivized so poorly, and it's such a hassle to set up, and it's such a hassle to do that it kind of not enough people do it, and now we're getting
Hmm.
that like poll and that blog trying to fix it as well. So hopefully, I hope trawling is something that becomes kind of a ubiquitous thing that people do with sailing.
Yeah, I gotta say as well. I mean, is it the bottled storm that allows you to teleport to your boat? That I understand that's sort of the late game vibe, but sailing before you have bottled storms, and I've never actually owned a bottled storm on either account that I've done sailing on. Um, just getting out on sea feels like a mental hurdle that a lot of players it's just a terrible feeling to one, most of the time you lose your ship. Nobody's sailing back to the goddamn port to, if you're doing salvaging or whatever, most of the time you're just clearing out your cargo and then you teleport out. And so every time you want to get back into sailing, there's like a 50K fee, or if you have like I guess the teleport focus on, you can just pay for it there. But it feels like there's this hurdle just to get out on sea and start doing an activity. Like just sailing to a spot is so boring for most people that there's just this sort of like, okay, I'm going to do sailing and I'm going to just really delve into it today. Like I'm not going to do any other activity. Like if I wanted to do a farm run mid salvaging, there's just no way I'm going to do that. I'm just no, like I'm not going to bother sailing back out here right now. This is too obnoxious. So I feel like there's these sort of like hurdles. I don't really know how to overcome them. I mean, I guess if I spent some time, I could imagine some ways to bypass. I mean, one of them could just be reducing, or I guess increasing the rate of the bottled storm, so it's a little bit more easy to obtain. Because I feel like just being close to certain islands already makes it a lot more smooth of an experience. But sailing from like Deep Sea Point, for example, all the way down to the salvaging spot, it's just like I never want to make that trek. It's just boring. And then the other thing about like deep sea trawling, like you mentioned, is again just sort of the hurdle, like just getting out there initially. There just feels like there's a lot of friction that could be looked at and removed. But yeah, I'm with you. Where if they would have spent the allocated time investing in ship combat to other aspects of it, I do feel like it would have made the skill a little bit better. And then at that point, they could have addressed boat combat. So.
Because at this point, like retrospectively, of course, I'm speaking, like how much benefit did we get from ship combat releasing on launch of the skill, right? Like it feels like half the blogs this year have been about fixing sailing and fixing the ship combat. And we had that update that was pretty negatively received, I would say. That first pass on fixing ship combat, and like for me, it's like okay, retrospectively, I would say maybe just how just do it as a separate launch. Maybe have a beta server come up, a beta world come up, where people can test this first iteration of ship combat and then give their feedback. So then the follow ups can be. I feel like realistically, they could have had ship combat in a good enough state. At the same time, we'll have it in a good enough state now if it didn't release on launch. Maybe that's like me like being way out there with saying that, but like
Mm.
with how many iterations of ship combat we're gonna get and we have already gotten, it feels like it's very player forward, which is it obviously should have always been. But by comparison to like the movement, which to me is the movement in sailing is the most impressive part. The fact that they kind of just nailed it to the point where they can make Barracuda trials feels as good as they do, like a Hollowed Sepulchre esque thing on the ocean. That's how much thought and effort and like real like development they put into movement and making that function well and feel satisfying to do. That's so impressive. And meanwhile, for combat, it's like the basics of just stand there and hit something feels like it has so many issues, right? So it's like to me, it was just a very different level of developer resources, or maybe just time, or even just maybe issues with the way the engine operates, kind of reared up there. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to ask me, for example, like what would be the main things to focus on with boat combat, just to basically fix it, at least fix the main issues. I brought up this idea on the latest blog post on my ramble. Was there's been so much discussion on like how are we just pulling in loot from sea creatures? There's so much discussion of like, oh, should we get crewmates to pull in your loot for you, or just. And I offered a suggestion that actually got quite a bit of support, at least in the comments, was just make it so. And I guess I prefaced it saying, imagine you go and kill the level 87 Slayer boss Kraken out there with your little trident or whatever. Imagine every single time you killed Kraken, you had to like throw a goddamn net out into the water right there, and then it's like it just slowly approaches you, and then you get your fucking harpoon or your pirate boots or something. It's just like that was a terrible feeling. That was a waste of time, and that was an awful experience. So then I was just thinking, how Kraken actually does it is whenever you kill Kraken, the item just spawns underneath you like a little splash animation. It's beautiful. It's just there it is. There's your thing. Do you want to pick it up or don't you? And that's the extent of it. And I feel like with boat combat, just simplify everything. We are playing a video game that doesn't need to focus on all the realism of reeling in a goddamn net for a dead sea creature out there, which is just disgusting. I don't want to see these dead creatures floating in the water. Like when they're dead, just make them disappear and have the little loot splash underneath your guy on the boat. Like that's, in my view, like that fixes so many issues already off the bat. The other thing is just enclosing the space of enemies. For example, killing manta rays for your ray barbs if you ever want to do deep sea trawling on an Iron Man. You got to go kill a bunch of manta rays, and they're spread all the way out. And it's like the respawn times of these guys is so obnoxious. You have to swivel your boat a lot. You got to like sail it around kind of and get to the next spot. And it's just obnoxious. And why not just have everything grouped up a lot more in a concentrated area? And then, of course, I love what they've done with auto retaliate, but you got to stop with the headache of your guys just stop attacking randomly after like 7 minutes or something. I think it's like 5 or 7 minutes. You guys are just like, yeah, they take a break from their cannons. So you're just sitting there, still focused on looting and tossing nets out, and your two cannoneers are just sitting there like scratching their butts, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? So a lot of this, and what's strange is I feel like we're going down a route where the game is becoming more AFK. And in my head, I'm just thinking, why not make sailing like an AFK sort of ship combat activity? Like you go out, you park your boat, you got a bunch of enemies swarming you, and then your cannons just auto retaliate and stuff, and you can just loot, and you're kind of the one sort of being the ship captain and just shooting here and there, repairing your ship or whatever. But you got your two guys permanently locked and loaded. I just feel like there's a lot of very common sense things of just making things feel good by automating things and not making it a hassle every time you're looting. So those two, at least, just the splash animation on your boat when things die, and then having things always be automatic. And then, of course, cleaning up the sailing menu when it comes to repairs. I don't know why it takes 2 clicks and a delay on top of that just to repair your ship with a crew member. So
Yeah. I would say that so first of all, I agree with you about the looting. I like the animation, obviously. They did a killer job on that. My like quick thing for them is I know sometimes developers and just in general, like they create something that looks great and they're like, oh, it sucked to just remove it from the game because it hasn't played out as well. So I would just say maybe just have like that net feature just be a feature of the boat, and you can like throw it. So like for example, if you're about to go do combat, you can shut the net out behind you in that same animation, and now you've activated like the loot feature of the boat. And whenever you kill something, you just get it in your inventory or pop it up on the bottom of the boat. So that way, it's like you can still see the animation when you want to go do combat, but you don't want to do it every single time you kill something. Instead, like you can just see it one time. That's like a bit of an in between there because I know how much effort and how annoying it is sometimes to animate in the OSRS engine. So I wanna like reach. Yeah, I want to reach a middle ground there where I'm like I see the work and I like the work, but yeah, seeing it every time is a bit of a pain, for sure. And
it's not even
yeah,
it's
sorry,
not
sorry.
even just the seeing it though. I mean, if I'm on one end of the boat, and I know your solution might address this, but if I'm on one side of the boat with my MSB on an early Iron Man and I'm trying to kill these guys, and then there's another manta ray that, and by the way, when your cannons are auto firing, like these manta rays path in the worst direction ever, where they go to the very edge of the boat on the other side, where sometimes the other cannoneer can't even see them. So the guy is you have to actually move your ship at that point. And then if I want to loot that dude, I can't like keep attacking and not lose ticks. I have to literally run across to the other side of the boat to toss the net out. And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, what is happening here? Just make the stuff spawn.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
No,
sorry to
I
interrupt.
no, I completely agree with you. I would say just like see it. So how? Okay, let me even go full armchair game dev here. I would say, look, we have a
Okay.
problem, and the best thing that OSRS does with problems is create goals that act as solutions to those problems. So it could just be the fact that now that we're getting a bit more of an expansion on boats and their hotspots, I guess. I'm forgetting their name now, but the things you build on the boats.
Y- Yeah,
And
facilities. The
facilities,
hotspots there. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. And now that we're getting a bit of an expansion on that, it could be that on your combat boat, like initially you start off, yeah, slow net throws or whatever, but there could be a whole tier of facilities that you can upgrade that do like a big AoE looting feature, right? Where now instead of throwing out your net, it just automatically vacuums in all the nearby stuff, like the auto net thrower, and it does that animation while you're just busy attacking something else, and it pulls it in while you're doing something else, and then everything does it becomes like an automated feature of the boat as you progress. At level 50 you can get that. At level 90 maybe there's an even greater, better element of that stuff. Like I feel like there is room there for rewards. I would just always caution to say that if we are going the reward route to fix something, if it's as tedious as it is right now, it definitely needs to be something that you can alleviate heavily early on in your sailing. Like you don't want to like, oh, finally I got my auto looter at level
Yeah.
92. Like we want it to be at like
Yeah.
level
Yeah.
40, 50 at most. Kind of like very similar to the salvage facility, right? Like the one where it allows you to salvage on the boat. That's like what, level 40, I think, right? Is when you can get that.
42, I think.
42.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's a great point to unlock something like that, right? Like you've already done a bit of salvaging, maybe you're like, okay, I know how it works, and now I get this really great QOL that makes it a lot more, less annoying to do. So
Yeah,
for
for
sure in that
real. No,
regard.
I will say, I mean, I can still appreciate that sort of progression. I just think there's always something in my view of just keep it very simple. I can definitely appreciate how an artist on the dev team made something beautiful and it looks good and it looks smooth. But it reminds me of when they released Grotesque Guardians. I know you weren't
Yeah.
playing back then, but when they dropped that, there was an entire like minute long animation of them waking up and like getting ready for the fight. Like you ring the bell and the statues come down and there's like this whole goddamn cinematic thing and you had to do it every single kill. And it was just like, what is going on? And the artist spent so much time on it, and every player was pissed off, out of control, because it's just like, dude, like, just move on. We get it. And I feel like the same thing is happening here on sailing. I mean, imagine literally every single enemy across the game was like a Raxor, where you kill the enemy and he's just sitting there lifeless on the ground, and then you have to like go pick him. Like, just
Yeah.
what is going on? It's just like, just give us the loot, just put it on the ground. Let's move on with our day. And that's at least my solution. I can definitely appreciate other people's perspectives, but in my head, I'm like, keep it very simple and just let the loot spawn in. That means there's no headache with dealing with crewmates or a boat holding loot. That feels a little odd, and it feels like a system that could potentially have some issues. I mean, we already have a cargo hold that can't hold traditional items. It's not like a bank. And I feel like if you have a little chest, like an additional chest or something that's just holding the loot, it just doesn't feel necessary. We could just simplify this completely and keep the old school feel of loot just appearing on the ground, appearing right underneath you.
Well, I just want to point out that the
Mhm.
idea that a cargo hold can hold your loot, I feel like that makes, like, I know there's probably issues. Oh, the ultimate Iron Man. Oh, there's gonna be problems with X, Y, and Z. But like the idea that you can go on an ocean and just farm a mob for like a ton of time and get like 160 slots filled up in your cargo hold, that would be a reason to go do sailing. Like in my eyes, where like, yeah, okay, maybe there's some issues with balancing there. What if there's the drops are really good? Do we want to have people able to be out there for 5 hours stacking up 160, inventory slots worth of
Mm.
X, Y, and Z? But like, yeah, I would say the answer to that is yes. If you want me to go out and do a slower method of combat, which is sailing combat, give me a benefit of doing that. That's not just training sailing as well, because that's not a benefit. Like there, this is part of the Twitter discourse maybe, but like I don't see training a skill as an inherent benefit. There needs to be a benefit to training the skill, which makes
Mm.
training it feel like an inherent benefit, if that makes sense. It's like a chicken before the egg situation in my own
Yeah, yeah.
mind. And to me, it's like the cargo hold being able to hold all of the loot that you get from killing sailing creatures. That would be an inherent benefit to go out and do sailing combat in my eyes. And maybe you completely disagree here. Maybe that is a bit overpowered, but
No,
I'd be
that's
curious to hear.
no, that's actually that's a great point. I think for a while, I'm just it feels weird to have a cargo hold that can only have stuff appear in there and then you can't deposit in there, because as soon as you can deposit your own stuff into a cargo hold, you've actually opened up a can of worms that
Yeah,
becomes
exactly.
like crazy. So if it is, I can definitely get on board with this idea that you're proposing, which is like a separate sort of cargo hold. Maybe it's still in the same cargo hold, but it's like a different tab on it that says, here's the loot that's been collected. And then the only way to, bank it is you actually have to sail back to your ship, which is honestly something that Jagex is trying to encourage more. I think they don't want people just teleporting off their boat. There is a fee for a reason. They want you to have that traditional like sailing back. That's the kind of loop that we get with deep sea trawling. You got to sail back and dump all your fish at that point. That feels more thematic. So I actually, yeah, I could definitely see that working too. I just don't want to see the net throwing out stuff. So as
Yeah.
long as the loot is instantaneously basically being thrown in, they could have some animations, but don't have it have any delay or effect on my character. That's fine.
I
Then
think
I could get on board with that too.
I think sailing back with 160 slots full of, of stuff you looted from killing mobs for like a couple hours, that
Hmm.
alone makes sailing back a little bit more satisfying, right? Because you're sailing back
Right.
with like a big like haul, right? It fits the thematic of being a sailor, right? Of getting a haul. That's already how trawling works. That's already how trawling works. Like we already fill up the cargo hold with those cooler packs, right? That store the fish that you catch. That's already how trawling works. So it would only make sense to me that that's how the combat would work too, and that would give incentives to combat. Because the more I think about combat and sailing, the more I'm just like there need there needs to be like a line in the sand. There needs to be like a vision for what the combat is. And we've been bouncing between the cannons do most of the damage, you do most of the damage. And the more I think
Mhm.
about it, the more I'm just like, listen, okay, like if we can't find a balance there, I would always default to the cannons being the core of your damage on the boat. Because as a captain, just from a thematic standpoint, you shouldn't be the one also doing damage. You should be piloting the ship. And that would also, if I'm just being very forward thinking here for a moment, like for what combat could be down the line and with sailing boss fights or whatever the fuck, you want to be the one piloting your ship, right? Because if there's going to be mechanics like whirlpools that you have to dodge while your crewmates are shooting a boss, that to me sounds way more fun than, oh, guys, it's time to DPS the sailing boss, get off the boat, equip your shadow, start DPSing the boss. Oh, there's a mechanic. Click the
Yeah.
boat, click the helm, start driving. Like that sounds miserable by comparison to actually just always being driving and your crew actually being, the cannoneers, which is what a crew on a boat would be as compared to a captain, which would be piloting the ship or helming the ship, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a interesting point. It's always funny when we imagine these future case scenarios where it's like, okay, they have figured out sailing, and I'm just thinking to myself, right now in its current state, yeah, moving around a ship and just dealing with combat in a state where you're moving the ship is terrible. And I would be mind blown if they can somehow execute on an interactive moving your boat and shooting at the same time and dodging stuff that actually feels fun, because that feels like a total nightmare at the moment. So I'd be very
My
impressed if Jagex can pull that off.
my like vision, I guess, would be that it's much more aligned with something like the Barracuda trial than it would be something like you get off the boat and start fucking doing a bofa on the enemy, right? Because to me, like what worked really well with Barracuda trials, right? It's the movement of the boat, in a perpetual movement, right? Like you're not like stopping the boat during a Barracuda trial. It's a perpetual movement of the boat while still prioritizing some level of like a precision with your clicks, right? One of my favorite parts of Barracuda trials was having to click like, okay, the rum, like the different frogs, and of course there were some issues with range there on the second trial, but like that element of the Barracuda trials to me is where combat would be great, right? Like, okay,
Mm,
maybe as in a fictitious combat encounter, right? You have both your crew members on the cannons, and you have to maintain the position of the boat, as in like you have to make sure that the cannons are pointing toward the enemy for as long as possible, because that's how you maximize your DPS. And then you can go around like picking up like certain crates that might refill your ammo or give you over like powerful cannonballs that your crewmates can use to like that's where the maximizing of your output, similar to how you
mm,
maximize your DPS in the main game for combat, would be like, not losing ticks. You wouldn't be losing like, momentum or I guess an angle on the boss while doing its mechanics, which is dodging things, picking things up, depositing things. Maybe like there's like fire on the water, oil fires on the water. You have to like, coat your boat in some kind of fire retardant thing. You have to go pick that up, and go click it, and then whatever. Like things like that could be included in the same way the Barracuda trials work as well as they do. And in my opinion, the Barracuda trials are the tightest example of sailing as a skill. So yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like what you just suggested could just be the fourth Barracuda
Yes,
trial where
exactly.
there
Yeah.
is elements of combat.
And that could be a good
Because
way
yeah, I
to
just can't.
test it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for real. I mean, I just can't see in random spots across the sea. Like this feels like a more choreographed thing, which is perfect for a Barracuda trial that involves combat. But I just feel like out in the sea, like that's going to be very hard to just have an encounter that's in the middle of the ocean that's engaging. It's not just ends up being swiveling your boat obnoxiously and
Yeah.
trying to dodge annoying things.
And I will say that I think that if we do get a fourth Barracuda trial, it shouldn't just be an XP thing. I really don't think so. I think our Barracuda trials kind of hit the three important parts of XP: early, mid, and late XP gain, right? For skills. I don't know if you need to power creep the Gwyneth Glide by giving the next Barracuda trial 280 or 300k experience an hour.
Yeah.
I don't think there's room really between the Gwyneth Glide and the frog one, which I'm not forgetting, the jubbly jive, right? I don't think there's room for that. I would much rather, and I don't, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I would much rather have the next one be more of like a skilling boss version of the Barracuda Trials, which would fit because, quite frankly, Barracuda Trials are already incredibly diverse. The Jubbly Jive is so different than the Gwyneth
Yeah,
Glide, which is so different than the first one you do, right? And I would love personally to see the next Barracuda trial be more loot centric, not XP centric. So maybe you get like 80 to 90k sailing an hour at level like 80 or whatever, but you actually get loot for doing it well. That would be cool as hell in my opinion. Like that would be
that
awesome.
would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, right now the incentive for Iron Men is to just do salvaging. Now, of course, when the courier tasks get loot sacks, that'll be nice, and it'll be a little bit more encouragement. But a lot of Iron Men, besides those just going to reclaim their max cape when sailing launched, a lot of them were just choosing to do salvaging because like that's the way you
Yep.
get loot. And
Yep.
there was no other real solution for that other than ship combat, which nobody wanted to do. So
Yep. And
yeah, that would be an amazing suggestion and
that
idea.
was one of my more controversial tweets, I think, is when I said to nerf salvaging because I don't like the idea that it's an AFK method that gives like 70k an hour that's also giving you loot. That to me is that issue of certain skills have where the AFK method feels so important and so like overbearing in how powerful it is that even if you have a non-AFK method that gives 200k an hour, a lot of the players are just going to default to the AFK method. I've always
Mm.
been very cautious with the kinds of AFK that I support in the game, and personally, I don't think an AFK method should ever be over like 35k an hour. Like I think anything above that to me is a bit insane for like just because it it prevents you from adding a really awesome active method because everyone's always going to feel that pressure to do something so as low effort as AFK, especially when it gives you loot, especially when the majority of other sailing activities don't give you loot, as you pointed out, right? The fact that they're now putting loot sacks on the like the turn in missions and stuff. I think they should do that with fucking the Barracuda trials too. Frankly, like who cares? Like I genuinely like oh my god, guys, we're gonna get like a couple salvages worth of loot from every Barracuda trial. Like truly the end of the world. No, it's not. Most people are still just going to be doing salvaging the whole time because it's so powerful and so AFK. But the people that do put in the effort to Barracuda trials should be disproportionately rewarded for that effort that they put in my humble opinion. Like if you are
Mm.
wanting to play a game for 40 hours and do high skill content like this, we should bend over backwards to get players like you to feel rewarded for doing that. That's a hot take, or maybe that's very like subjective opinion. That's totally fine, but I don't know. I feel like I would want to always reward people who put in that effort. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, so when I hear salvaging, when I'm thinking of Giga AFK, like star mining AFK, you're just not getting anywhere near those rates. It feels like the two
Yeah.
people on your ship. I mean, yeah, maybe at 99 sailing or like, in the 90s when you're kind of approaching it, having two guys AFKing on the ship, like I don't even think you're getting like 60k XP an hour that way. I think you actually do have to be engaging with it, clicking your own salvaging hook, and then as soon as you start sorting, have the other guy on. There is a little bit more engagement than just simply AFK in this for 7 straight minutes and then just click one time and AFK for 7 minutes and getting decent rates. And so I'm actually very okay with the current state of salvaging. I think it's totally fair, and you can easily increase your XP rates by engaging more in it. You can do the two tick stuff, which I think is such a fun and just soothing way to do tick manipulation because
Yeah,
it's
I love
literally
that. I love
one
the tick.
click.
Yeah, I love the
Yeah,
tick manip on it.
one click every 4 ticks is just such a good feeling, and you're technically two ticking, and it's a really good feeling. And then you also have the 1.5 ticking without any dropping, which by the way, if gnome cube was added, that would be even nicer. But regardless, the not having to constantly drop and the not having to constantly move and then click an object is nice. It's just click the next object. So I feel like we have a good we have something nice going on with salvaging, but I think they're addressing. They haven't addressed it with Barracuda Trials yet. I do think Barracuda Trials could also get loot crates or loot sacks, whatever they're adding. I love that they're doing it with courier tasks, and I think Barracuda Trials should get that same treatment. It doesn't need to be out of control or anything, but just give you the occasional chance of getting like a dragon sheet from completing a lap. I think that would be totally fine.
Yeah, I think it should be
And
really dependent
yeah,
on like your speed and like all the stuff you pick up during the Barracuda trial, right? Like it could be I mean they could really do some fun stuff with it, right? Like there could be like a small chance that every time you pick up a small like crate or whatever, um like stuff like that could be really fun. You know, like stuff like that could be, oh man, we pick up this little crate, oh it had a dragon sheet in it. Congratulations. Like
yep.
small chance that stuff like that, it just adds so much more excitement to it. Right now, to me, I think it's weird that the most exciting stuff you're doing in sailing from like a loot standpoint is fucking salvaging. Like that, as much as I do like salvaging, and I support what you're saying here, I do enjoy
Mhm.
salvaging a lot. Um, it just it-
Takes
it's
away from the rest of the skill because
yeah,
there's
it
so much
does.
incentive to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%
And
it does.
what they could do with Barracuda Trials even is just have like a reward shop where the more you do it, you're just building up points, and then you go to the shop and you're like, okay, I want to buy dragon nails with my points, or I want to buy dragon sheets, and then there's just a store there where like how many laps have you done? Like how many points have you accumulated? That would be an interesting thing because then you got salvaging, which is giving completely separate loot to like ship building stuff. I mean, I know you get the occasional nails and stuff, but you're not really getting dragon sheets or dragon nails in large quantities. You're getting a lot of just normal skilling resources and alks and stuff, which is cool. And then you would have courier tasks, which is giving some things, but it's sort of more random because you're just getting crates. And then you could have the Barracuda, which is more purchase focused. Like I'm going to do this and then I'm going to be able to buy exactly what I want for maybe a higher premium.
Yep. I know I agree with that. I would always support that. I think one of my first like ever suggestions for sailing was stuff like that, like a reward shop. I think my idea was originally for the actual like turn-in missions, but like a reward shop where you can accumulate points and spend those points. It's always just satisfying. And then you could just do all kinds of fun meta progression elements to that. Like what if you unlock like different like, you know, you can put down buoys that create like whirlpools that make certain like trips across the ocean faster, like things like that. I think add a lot more like connectivity to the different environments that you're sailing, and yeah, I would 100% support that. Um, I did want to ask you, so like because we're going on this sailing, I don't want to say tangent, but this sailing conversation here, and it's been a focal point of conversation within the community about sailing. Um, and one of the main reasons I think that is, well, there's 2 points, but one of the main reasons that is because the OSRS has been experiencing a bit of a content drought this year, I would say, at least by comparison to the past 2 years. And I would love to hear just your thoughts on that. Do you think that's true? Are you okay with that? Are you not okay with that? Things like that.
Yeah, no, I'm okay. I think there's always like a almost like an unnecessary uproar when there's like a 6 month period of not much content being added. I'm like, I'm okay with that because it actually allows you to sink into a grind more and not feel like, oh, the next thing's out. I get that sort of anxiety when more and more content is added and added and added. It just sometimes you want a little bit of a break from the big releases. Like I love the small quality of life stuff and just the weekly kind of cleanups on things. I think it's always nice. It's not like we're going a year plus without any updates. I just think at the beginning of this year where we didn't really see much, that's totally fine. In my personal opinion, we have so much content. There's so much to do that I don't think it's the end of the world. I can support those that are flipping out because of the bad timing of a price increase and then no content. Like that's a fair point, fair criticism. I'm not butthurt at all about the quote unquote
Mhm.
content drought.
Yeah, I think for me, it's almost like it's something maybe to get used to because obviously I'm a relatively new player by comparison to other players. Obviously, at this point, I doubt I'm that new, although it depends on who you ask. But considering like I'm close to maxing and all that kind of stuff, but uh, like it's definitely a bit of a like not a turning point, but something to consider really where I'm so used to the cadence of the past 2 years where not only was there just not really I think the longest content drought was like a month or 2 months. At that point, without like something fun, exciting that coming out. So to me, I just had to kind of get into a new mind state there or mind space there where I'm just like, okay, well, we're just really not going to get that much this year. Not from what I can see. Like, I think this year the two big updates are going to be Blood Moon Rises, which I'm very very excited for, and Raids 4, which it depends on how you feel about raids. The and I think we're also going to get the player island, I want to say, this year as well at some point, although that's really not confirmed. I don't know what we're getting there. But those are going to be like the bulkiest updates of this year. And other than that, we're gonna get like the summer sweep up and stuff, which TBD on that. We'll see how that goes out. But yeah. So for me, it's like okay, I gotta get into that headspace. Although a little part of me, I will be honest, uh, is a bit kind of not sad or disappointed, but like cautious about like, okay, you guys just had these huge upswings in momentum with the past 2 years, how much traction the game was getting. And then it's like, okay, we just released a new skill, this huge big update, one of the biggest updates in history, probably the biggest update in the game's history. Anyway, we'll see you guys in 6 months. And that to me almost like puts a damper on some of the newest people's perception of the game, where I'm like, oh man, I wish those people kind of saw the crazy content cadence that I was experiencing when I was getting into the game.
Mm.
Maybe that's too much to expect because maybe I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. My perspective on why there could be a content drought happening right now, or like a slowdown, is because of a skill like sailing requiring so much immediate dev time and effort that like it almost felt like they didn't have time to get going on future updates like they did back in the past 2 years, where chances are they were working on Volamore Part 2, while working on Volamore Part 1. So like everything was had this like very smooth, like overlapping feeling to it. But post sailing, it feels like all dev effort went to that. And then it's like, okay, guys, now we got to get back into the swing of things by just getting going on future updates that aren't going to come out for a minute.
Mm.
That's a bit of a
See, I
outside
feel
gap there.
I feel very much go for it. I love it, honestly. I feel like there's a lot of similarities between me and you. We get very passionate, and I'm here for it. So I disagree for the most part on this sort of like lack of content. I mean, we did get sailing. Sailing was a huge project, a huge undertaking, and I feel like if Jagex were to just be like, all right, next project within the next like 2 months and just start just releasing other things, people would be like, what the hell are you doing to sailing? Sailing's in a terrible state right now. Why are you not focusing on that? So I feel like there's no winning with
Yeah.
Jagex. It's like you can't just release something and then move on to the next big thing and everyone's gonna be happy. No, people are gonna be butthurt that you released something and then didn't nurture it. You're like just neglecting it. So Jagex is not, they are kind of at a crossroads. There's like, okay, what do we do? And then they also worked on leagues, which was like an insane undertaking. And I, of course, don't play leagues, but I understand how enjoyable it is for a lot of the player base. So I'm like, okay, like that's awesome. Spend time, getting players into this temporary thing. Again, like I'm not the player for it. And I know some others kind of get annoyed by this recurring leagues that's kind of taking over a lot of the development time for the main game. But again, it's like that is worth it to Jagex, clearly. And it's worth it to a lot of the players. A lot of players, like that's their favorite time of the year. So I get that. And that's a huge undertaking, and leagues is still going on. And then we have the summer sweep up, which I am confident that they'll be dropping a ton of nice quality of life updates across the game. And just to say, oh, like the only things we're going to get is Blood Moon Rising and Fractured Archive. It's like, okay, we're releasing an entire new raid, which is a massive, massive project that Jagex has to work on for years. And I just feel like, okay, so we have this huge thing coming out, plus a Grandmaster quest coming out. I just think we actually are in a good content state. It just so happens that the beginning of the year was two temporary kind of things going on, and leagues is not just a simple, oh, we just threw this together, here you go, have fun, and we're gonna go back and nap for 3 months. It's like, no, they had like 5 or 6 continuous leagues sort of improvements, blog posts over like as soon as leagues launched for like the next 3 weeks. It was like 6 individual blog posts, like just trying to make leagues the best experience they possibly could for players, which again doesn't speak to everybody that's just playing on the main game like myself, but at least I know for a fact that Jagex is working their asses off. At least a lot of the developers are really putting a lot of time, and I just think it's okay to have these mild, quote unquote droughts, because again, they're trying to improve what's already in the game, like sailing and stuff. Are they doing a great job at improving sailing quickly and rapidly? No, not really, but they're also focusing on leagues, it seems like, and they also just want to be careful. And I can appreciate Jagex being careful and not going overboard with things, because if players are like, oh, fix this, fix this, fix this, fix this, and then Jagex does all of it at once, there could just be a bunch of broken levers at that point, and then you have to like backtrack Um, and we've seen that in the past. I could bring up some examples that aren't as extreme as a whole skill, but what we don't want to see are way too many things being fixed at once, and then it becomes like really foreign. Like, what just happened here? You fixed way too much at once. So they have to do these incremental changes. And you even had Mod Arcane on. I was actually listening back to that conversation just yesterday, just in sort of in preparation for this cast, and I loved his insights of just things have to be very incremental. They have to be little patches and little patches, and that really is the healthy way forward. And I agree. I hate it when I have a really passionate idea that I'm like, just implement it already, or like the community's flipping out about something, like just add it. But I think Jagex does a pretty good job with timing, and it keeps the game feeling consistent and feeling very slow and incremental, which is low key, I think, a psychological thing that most players actually care about, uh, whether we know it or not. It's the same as I see it with like software updates. For example, it felt like iOS, like the iPhone operating system, took so long to get to like a more customizable state, but they did like the smallest little increments over time. And somehow that was like a real like that was the successful route to take. If they were to just make year after year just a bunch of changes, it just ruins that experience for players where it's like the game feels foreign, the operating system feels foreign, like what is going on here? So that incremental progress is, I believe, the healthy way for this game to like thrive long term. So all that said, I'm actually quite satisfied with what Jagex is doing, and again, as a sort of OG kind of more, no, I can't even say purist, but more of a classic type player. I enjoy when we have these sorts of just uh like droughts, I guess. I don't know what other word to say. Just these sort of runs where like there's not huge releases. I can kind of just relax and lean into these grinds and not feel like I'm missing out.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify too. Like, I don't want to imply that I think the devs are being lazy. I think that I've always been very, full of praises for the Jagex devs, not just because I don't think
Hmm.
they're lazy, but because I think they're super passionate, and I don't want to imply that because I've never ever had a bad experience with the Jagex dev where I got the impression that like this guy doesn't care about what he's talking about. Like all of them are
Yeah.
so passionate and love the game so much, so I don't want to give that impression. I just meant more so like I think that the sailing release kind of like had so much of their focus converge on a singular thing that they're that and this is just my assumption. I don't have any behind the scenes information,
Hmm.
but my assumption is that because of that, they didn't have like multiple teams able to start content like down the line. That's in my opinion why I think that Blood Moon Rises was delayed is because like so much effort was put into making sure sailing is functional and works well and
Yeah.
is fleshed out on release that they didn't have like a team go off and start doing like previs and working on like the Blood Moon Rises like months and months and months before we even saw the first actual poll for it. And now that sailing's out, they have a smaller team working on sailing, and they have multiple other teams working on a whole different thing, right? They have their leagues patch team, they have their Blood Moon Rises team, which I know a couple developers on it right now, and they're doing great work. And I'm sure they even have like a whole team separated just for raids and just like making sure these things work. Maybe like 4 or 5 developers just like banging out the boss concepts, banging out the loot concepts, and then just bringing and making sure that all that stuff is tested and works well for the eventual blog that we'll be seeing for the raids rewards and stuff. Like I'm sure that all of that is happening, and I want to be very like understanding of that. From my mind, it's mostly just like it's just a new kind of cadence, right? Because when I started playing the game, that was Volamore Part 1 release, and it was pretty much nonstop content from Volamore Part 1 to Volamore Part 3 and to Sailing. It was just straight up like, I mean, I just remember in 2025, it was like Yama and then almost immediately Doom, like two end game bosses that took up so much of my time and my group, my partner's time. That was just crazy. It was crazy. So it's definitely a bit
Mm.
more bit of a thing to just get used to. And I'm not trying to say it's like a awful thing. It's going to kill the game. By no means do I want to come off like I'm suggesting that. Just like a new mentality to sit in, and it could very well be for the better of the game, as you pointed out. So I'm not trying to. I don't want to stake out a very intense position on this because I really don't. I just giving
Yeah.
my perspective on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it felt like you were just saying the community is feeling this way, and I think I just needed to offer a little bit of pushback for those assuming just nothing's getting done really. It's like there's so much behind the scenes and so many fixes they're trying to get right. So
I know I was
yeah.
when I was in my most doomer position on this, I looked at the differences between the content that we've gotten in OSRS versus what the content they've gotten in RS3, and I'm like, oh my god. But then again, but simultaneously, I'm like, okay, but this is like RS3's time to kind of like try and get back into the spotlight for things. It's almost like RS3's having that like 2024 upswing in content cadence that OSRS had in 2024, and now it's like I'm totally fine with OSRS maybe just being a little chiller for the first half of the year, get things that maybe aren't working as well out, get a really great summer sweep up going where a lot of the most some of the biggest pet peeves in the community are ironed out, and then we can get Blood Moon Rises, which it's a Grandmaster quest. It looks like it's going to be huge. We get a whole new zone with it. Like I'm very excited. That's the most exciting update of the year to me is Blood Moon Rises.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you were going to ask something, I think, before I started talking about that.
No, I have the Blood Moon Rises rewards blog pulled up for myself though, because I know that's probably going to be what we're talking about next.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sure. Like, what are your thoughts on BMR? Like, I'm excited because I love quests, especially new ones. I love doing new quests with that quest helper, and that's very exciting for a proper full grandmaster. It's a solo boss. No, sorry, it is a solo boss, but it's like a Fasani tier single boss. I don't care if it's solo or duo. I like duo bosses too, but the fact that it's just like this insular boss that they're releasing that they say is Fasani tier, I am so excited for that. I love that kind of stuff. Doom is my one of my favorite, if not my favorite bosses ever that I've done, and I guess I've done most of them, but Yama I love too. So it's like I'm just very so excited for that. Yeah, so I just love to hear your thoughts on it. What do you think of BMR? What do you think? When do you think it's gonna come out? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm not really sure the time frame. I haven't really been keeping up to date necessarily, but I am excited for these new weapons. So obviously the Crimson Kiston, however you pronounce that, is looking sick. I mean, that's the flail weapon that we've been wanting for years.
Yeah,
Just this like big fat flail crush weapon. So super excited. I'm excited to see when they randomly have a stab option for it, which would make zero sense, but they
yeah.
seem to do that occasionally. Just I think the Vigora's chain mace has a stab option. You're like, what the
I
hell? Like,
want
what are
to
you even
say
talking
every
about?
flail in the game has a stab option. Verax has a stab option too. I think it's really bizarre.
So weird. I mean, I guess
Yeah,
I kind of can get it because it's like puncturing. It's kind of stabbing, but that should just be crush. Anyway, it does have zero stab, so that's at least good. But yeah, it looks like a really fun weapon to use, and I think the animation's just gonna be sick. And then of course, the necklace of rupture is looking really sexy. It still has that vibe of the anguish, at least aesthetically. Obviously, the stats are insane. We could talk. I mean, I know we're probably later down in the conversation going to talk about just balancing equipment and everything like that. I am. I guess I'll just say it right now. I've always been a player that's more be super, super slow on the power creep. I love it. I bring up the example oftentimes of the primordial boots coming out, where you had dragon boots, best in slot, +4 melee strength. You have the new best in slot prims, +5 melee strength. That's it. And then you got 2 additional accuracy on the other stats. And it's like, those boots were still 30 mil, like they were still everybody wanted them. They're the best in slot, and that's all you needed to do. You just needed to add 1 to it, and people are going to want it because it's best in slot. And I feel like what we are seeing is this surge of power creep in every update because the player base just craves it so much, and there's not really a team holding it. Yes, we bring in the reins a little bit, I guess, comparatively. Like, it could be much worse. I just always am a player that's like, again, in exception to like mega rares or stuff, which is a whole separate topic that I have some issues with. But with basic bosses, like literally all you need to do is just add like 1, maybe 2 additional strength to things. And I'm more on board with just 1 because what it ends up doing is it kind of creates this more vibrant game where you don't feel like you're missing out drastically on not having the new best in slot. If the best in slot is only 1 additional max hit, you can feel all right just using 2 upgrades down and feeling like you're still getting good power out of it. I don't like it when there's like these massive, massive power increases from 1 best in slot to the next. And it's like, okay, now you just feel like crap if you're not using it. Like, you got to get this thing. And I think old school is one of those games where if we want this game to not be capped or have some really terrible fork in the road that we face in the next few years with just power creep in general. And then again, like trying to tie it in with PvP, which is a whole separate option thing to talk about. We just got to be very careful with these incremental things. So as much as I love the Necklace of Rupture, I just feel like you're just going a little bit too extreme with it. With the +8 range strength, like that could have been +6
Is
easily.
it
Like
+8? Is that what it is? That's great. That's awesome. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's +8. So it's going to be fun, of course, but then you also have Seeker arrows, which are coming out, which is giving you 2 additional minimum hits. So instead of hitting 1s, now your minimum hit will be 3s. And it's like, that is basically the equivalent of 2 additional max hits. And like we don't need all this. I feel like the Seeker arrows could have just been +1 tier max hit, and people would still be using them all the time because it is best in slot. It's giving you a max hit. There it is. And then the other one, and just for perspective, when TOB came out, the Sanguinesti staff, the new best in slot mage weapon at the time, the harmonized orb wasn't out yet. Obviously, the shadow and the Heka or the Eye of Iac obviously was not out yet. The Sanguinesti had 1 max hit over the Toxic Trident or the Trident of the Swamp. One max hit over it. That was it. And then obviously the healing effect, which is cool. But it was a very expensive thing to use, and it had one, and everybody sought after it because it was the best in slot. And that's all you need with best in slots. And so, yeah, my issue with this, generally speaking, and I know this is a hot take for most people. Most people are just like, we want the power creep. Like, just fucking let us hit harder. Like, we just want to hit harder and harder and harder, and that's all we want in the game. And that's just not how I view it. I want the game to feel very filled out and very tight, like sort of like compact. When we saw the Shadow release, and now I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but like when we saw the Shadow release, if you were ignoring the harmonized staff, and a lot of people kind of did just ignore it because it had like a few use cases and it was just kind of a nuisance to use. But if you're looking at the Sanguinesti to the Shadow, it is literally a 1 raid difference. It's raids 2 to raids 3. And it's just this like 40% DPS increase. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? We did not need to go this extreme. And then we have other issues arise where like the Shadow is just a god weapon. You just use it and you nuke everything in your path. And there's just no defense really you're focused on anymore. So that's my main concern. But overall, I do like the ideas. I just think the power doesn't need to be as strong as it currently is.
I like having you on because I think you and I inhabit very different sides of this specific conversation where I'm very like I'm cautious about power creep, but in a very different way. Where like there's a good amount to unpack here, which I think is gonna be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the first thing is just general player feedback and what players want and what players are positive and respond well to. I would say, and tell me I'm wrong because I'm just kind of analyzing this post hoc way after I started playing, or I should say wasn't playing at the time. But you know, it seems like players have retroactively really not enjoyed that like space between 2018 and 2021 ish, where Jagex was incredibly cautious with power creeping items, like things like the Grazi Rapier, like the Sail Door, like the Inquisitor Mace, like the Inquisitor Armor, like these items that, as you point out, are very minor increases. It seems like players have retroactively felt that they were just really underwhelming and not worth going for. Like, and we've seen that bear out at least in many ways, right? Sail Door, no one cares about the Sail Door. The Inquisitor Maze, like no one's farming Fasani. The Grazi, I mean, it's dropped in price by God knows how much, and obviously that's because of the Fang. But also simultaneously, the Fang is obtainable, and it's definitely a lot more impactful feeling than wearing the Grazi. And I think for me, the secondary argument is more historic, really. And to be clear, there is a counter argument to this, and I also inhabit the counter argument. So it's like I'm in a weird place where I like agree with both sides, and I'm trying to find a way for the game to exist in the future where where we're not getting 1 max hit every 18 years, and people are like, well, why am I even grinding something? But on the other hand, I don't want to exist in a game where everything's being devalued every single 2 years, and that's awful too. So I'm sorry, that was a big preempt there. So what I'm trying to say is, I think that the current problem I'm having historically is that historically the power creep was pretty crazy in OSRS, not in OSRS, in RuneScape, right? Like the difference between a D-Long and a whip is enormous. Like it's straight up enormous. Like and almost a mega rare difference in power there, right? Like it's one tick faster and a 16 strength bonus or something like that over the D-Long. It's crazy. Then from the whip we got the chaotic rapier, which was a solid upgrade, and then from that we got the dry guard. Now we're going to RS3 territory, but like so pretty immense increases to that 4 tick fast hitting weapon. It's only in OSRS that we really see that pullback happen right after the Trident and all that kind of stuff with the Sanguinesti. And I think overall, there's a lot of positives that happen in regard to, as you point out, making the game tighter, but a lot of negatives happen in that a lot of players don't feel incentivized to grind, and you just develop really niche communities that do feel incentivized to grind it, but an overall average of players that, from my perspective, don't even touch the content. Like TOB is still, I want to say, the least popular raid of the three. And that's a bit sad because now at this point, TOB is literally just the scythe. Like that's where the value of TOB comes from, other than just having a decent common drop. Like the other rares are just dropping in price. Uniques are just getting cheaper because people see less and less value in them because they are such an incremental increase, and players have received those incremental increases more and more negatively. And while I don't necessarily disagree with you in concept, I think unfortunately the player base seems to really have entered a new phase in the way they perceive the game, where they just don't see a lot of value. Like a good example would be if the Nox Halberd released and it was like a 1 strength bonus over, or maybe even equivalent to like a tent whip. Like, would anyone really like enjoy? I mean, I should say anyone. There would be people that enjoy it, but I think the reception to Araxor as a fight would have been a lot more negative. So how do we balance that? Like, do we just shoulder those criticisms and just keep going, or is it worth considering an alternative?
Well, there's a couple different routes to take. One of the things we saw with TOB release was, I mean, the rapier came out, but also the scythe came out at the same time, and the scythe was just destructive. I mean, it was just like a nuclear bomb with DPS. It was just insane. And yeah, so now people are imagining in their heads like, okay, like scythe is just the go-to, and everything else just feels so much less powerful in comparison. Now, and this was always sort of uh a I guess a design choice that I more leaned into at around that time, was just have super giga powerful weapons have a big price tag. And I'm talking about upkeep. Imagine the scythe just dropped with 0 upkeep. It's literally, it doesn't need to be filled with vials of blood, it doesn't need to be charged with blood runes, and it just comes out with the power of the charged scythe. That would be a fucking mistake. That would have been a mistake to release into the game. That's my personal take, especially at that time. It would have been just devastating. Like, why are we doing this? You're just outclassing every goddamn weapon in almost every single use case scenario with 0 price tag for upkeep. And so some people could probably disagree with it at this point in time because we've just seen so much immense power creep in the game. So I can definitely see people saying, yeah, that wouldn't be a problem anymore. And a lot of people are very jaded these days because there's been an increased amount of time of people being max and having max gear. Back then, not everybody had max gear, and there was a lot more people recognizing the issue with having insane power creep. These days, you got people that have been maxed with, full Torva and everything else, just pimped out to the gills for 6 years straight, and they're getting fucking bored. And it makes goddamn sense that they just want insane power spikes because they're just camped for 6 years with 0, like huge upgrades and stuff. Like I don't know if that's sort of going counter to my point. Like, we have seen huge upgrades obviously in different styles like the shadow and stuff, but like people are just bored, and we have to now cater to people that are just been maxed for over half a decade. And I'm like, this is not healthy to just keep catering to these people that just are bored of their current gear and they're playing 16 hours a day, and it's just like, holy crap. I've got to at least see the other side as a new player and just seeing how extreme these spikes can be. So, or I say new player, but like new accounts. I'm playing a bunch of new accounts lately. But so one of the routes we could take is just having those giga bazooka type weapons have a huge hefty price tag. It should be for the people that want to spend a bunch of money doing it. We saw that with the blowpipe. The blowpipe, most noobs when the blowpipe first launched were using mithril darts in it or addy darts, and that was like expensive to use addy darts. Hardly anybody was using rune. Amethyst didn't exist. And only the Giga Chads were using dragon darts. That was just insane. Like you were just blowing your money using dragon darts in a blowpipe. You're insane for doing that. Turns out, however, that actually was probably, I mean, spending more money makes you more money ultimately. I feel like that's a mindset thing. That's a separate discussion. But like, that is a really cool system to have where you kind of choose the power increase. And if you want the most DPS, you're spending a lot of money doing it. So the Scythe, I wanted a huge price tag on. The Shadow is fucking cheap. It's cheaper than the Sanguinesti. It's like the cheapest thing to ever use, like a Soul and 5 Chaos or something. Every 5 ticks too. So this thing is cheap as hell. If this thing could be cranked up in price, so there's actually a thought process going through your head like, okay, do I actually need to use the super powerful, super expensive Giga Chad bazooka weapon right now, or can I just use the lower tier thing and just save some money? I feel like that is a solution. I know that doesn't sound attractive to people, but that's a way to balance things. That's just one solution you could take. And then, of course, the other is to just balance things properly. I mean, the dev team themselves has said, yeah, the Shadow, the way they balance it is just a mistake. They don't know what to do with it now because if they try to make any changes, the whole community is going to uproar and flip out, just like we saw with the blowpipe changes. But the Shadow is just, the way it works is so silly, where it's just based on the rest of your gear. But if you can afford a Shadow, unless you're like some Iron Man that just spooned one, for the most part, you can afford best in slot gear, and then you're just an unstoppable force that can melt everything in your path. So just a
Yeah.
lot of I have a lot of splitting thoughts. So let me know what your breakdown
Yeah,
is.
I'm so the on the initial point in regard to like people getting max gear and being bored, I agree with you. That's why the deeper into the end game I go, the less I like the idea of mega rares. That's maybe a whole separate topic, but
Mm.
like the more I play OSRS, the more of the and I think like a lot of people that heavily disagree with me because yeah, people get really upset when I say this. The more they think that like when I get all 3 mega rares on my Iron Man, that's when I'm gonna see the light and I'm gonna start loving them. But no, I think the even more I'm gonna, and I feel like maybe I just understand myself here, or maybe I'm totally off too. Maybe that's the case too. But I feel like the what you're describing here of people just being geared out, kitted out on max, and not having any upward mobility is exactly the problem that mega rares create. And the more mega rares we have, the more that problem starts happening. And the more that problem becomes ubiquitous, where not only are mega rares such a huge power increase over an existing item and the existing bis before mega rare, but when they get added, they're created specifically around never being able to be outscaled on any individual niche that they inhabit. So what ends up happening is you create all these rock paper scissors situations where, okay, well, this boss is 2x2 or 3x3 or higher, neutral or slash weak, defense neutral or slash weak. So the scythe is never going to be worse than any other weapon ever. Unless they have a very specific scenario like the Yama one, where the Demon Bane, he has double the Demon Bane weaknesses, so the Demon Bane weapons are really good on him. But then a lot of those players hated that too, because it's like we're using a dinky mid-game weapon over the $1 billion scythe, really? And they get upset about that because like we just invested all that money on a fight that feels perfect for the scythe, but we're not even using the scythe on it. So you get this, you're in between a rock and a hard place there in regard to the way you balance that, where unless you create content for the scythe, you or not, I don't want to say they create content for it, but I should say unless you create content where the scythe is the best, you start devaluing it implicitly. And if you do create content where the scythe is the best, then you just create an environment where there's literally no more itemization in the rest of the game. And that's always been a point where I'm very critical of the end game in OSRS, more so than the early and mid game, where the deeper into the end game I go, the less I ever think about what I'm wearing. And that sucks because thinking about what you're wearing in RuneScape feels like one of the most important and satisfying and exciting features of the game. Like I always say, not to go off on a tangent here, but I always say that one of the coolest points of progression, for as much as I don't love TOA, was progressing from like 200s to 400s and how much what I brought to the raid changed. The same applies to Cox. How much my items changed between like learning it and getting good at it. And in the end game, that happens less and less because, oh, what do you bring? Well, obviously you're bringing the mega rare. That's it. Have fun. Or like, what items do you bring? What armor? Well, is it a melee boss? Okay, well, Torva with the Oathblade helm. Fascinating. Like, wow, that's whoa. Like that truly a creative decision you just made there. And my concern there is that we're removing, because the end game in OSRS, and I'm sorry for going on and on here, but the end game in OSRS is already just combat essentially. Like unless you're like really passionate about skilling to 200 millions, if you're already maxed, or even if you don't want to max because you don't want to get agility to 99, like it's just combat already. And we're also losing a lot of creativity in the way combat is itemized around. So the difficulty, or I should say the exciting portion of combat then just becomes difficulty and just pushing players to be harder, or to have harder encounters or engage in harder encounters or to min-max the encounters that already exist. And while those things are great in and of themselves, they create a deeper and deeper niche in the end game. And you're essentially not creating an avenue for players that might not value the most niche aspects of the game, like speedrunning or min-maxing or, skilling past 99, to essentially drop the game completely in the end game. And when the end game is so group centric, next TOB, the next raid, when it's so group centric, you're essentially creating an environment where new players aren't going to be filtering into the end game and enjoying it that much, and creating a deeper and deeper, like, I don't want to say gatekeep because it's not gatekeep. It's mostly just a community that never feels like it's going to grow. And I'm very concerned about that personally, not because I'm like some genius about the game, by no means, but more so just because I want to see more people experience Tob and more people experience the next raid. And it just doesn't seem like there's an avenue to achieve that because of things like how capped the ceiling of the game is right now, where the mega rares are so rare, they're so hard to obtain, and they're so expensive that by creating an item to outpower them, if ever, in the next 50, 100 years, would feel like a dramatic mistake in game design, right? Because they would kill the content they come from, because they are the only ones buoying that content's value. I'm sorry, that was such a long ramble, but like that's my like really flaming hot take on mega rares and just what they do to the game. Because I don't think, and a lot of people look at my perspective and go, you just think that all the content is designed around mega rares. I don't. I fully am aware every piece of content in the game is completable without mega rares. That's how I did most content in the game. But like, it's not that they design content around that, is that they cap the way content can be designed, because they are the number one thing and they will always be the number one thing. There will never be an item, a slash item, that's better than the scythe, ever, unless they start making bosses that are one by one, which would be ridiculous. Like that's a very strange thing for Jagex to do, because bosses need to be a bit larger thematically from a clickbox standpoint. So anyway, I don't know how you're going to address any of that, because I am sorry for yapping there, but I just wanted to lay out some of my groundwork there. I'm sorry about that.
No, don't be. I feel like a scythe. I mean, just mega rares in general. I feel like I'm pretty much on the same page, maybe for different reasons.
Yeah.
Again, I'm very much in the state of mind where you just need incremental increases. That's it. If you want a new best in slot, you don't need to go out of control with it. And I really don't like. I mean, the Tebow, I'm trying to think back to 2016 when all those raid items were being pulled, and like everybody was talking about them, and like what could they be? I remember they were originally going to come out with some ranged armor for chambers that ended up getting scrapped. I think they were actually planning on releasing 3 types of art, like literally a melee set, a range set, and a mage set from chambers. It was just gonna be like this overload of everything. Like you just get everything from here. I'm glad they scrapped that. I don't know exactly how that played out, but I mean the twisted bow, when we were first seeing it, I mean I think there was just so much hype just because there's just going to be some god item in the game. But I remember them testing it. They had to like rework boss's stats, because like Bandos, for example, had like a mage level of 250 or whatever. And so you could just Tebow Bandos in 4 shots. Just there you go. Bandos is dead in 4 shots. You just stand in the corner and just shoot him 4 times with a Tebow. Like they literally did a Q&A test. There's a video of it still where you could just see, I think Mod Ronin or somebody just sitting there just nuking Bandos. I'm like, this is so bad for the game. This is such a private server thing. We kind of just have accepted it now over time, and we've seen a lot of power increase across the game, but that's because we see these mega rares that are sort of leading the way. Um, yeah, I've never been a fan of mega rares. I've always thought they were like it's cool to have some sort of aspirational content, but again, you really theoretically do not need something that's explosive bazooka style god tier weapon to have that aspirational content to go for. If every item in this game, like to increase your arsenal, if all the best in slots are just very slight incremental things, that is still aspirational content to get. You want to get the best in slot. Our brains are designed to just, even if it doesn't fucking increase your DPS at all, you still want the best in slot, and you don't need to do much to it. So I do feel similarly to you, where I really want to get rid of the whole mega rare thing
I,
entirely. I'd love it if we just took a step back and realized, okay, we have the three styles that are super giga chat. We've hit the ceiling on these power things. Can we just now for the next several years just increase the mid game stuff, or not mid game stuff, but just everything in between, kind of fill in those gaps. We saw it with the Eye of Ayak. Thank God the Eye of Ayak isn't better than the Shadow. I guess in some situations it is. But they just tried to fill the gap between the Sang and the Harm and the Shadow with the Eye. And that was great. So can we just fill those spaces before we start getting more and more power?
I wanna hear your thoughts on this, because I think one of the reasons psychologically that this kind of power creep either feels good or bad depending on who you ask is because of the expectation of power that's given by a mega rare's existence. So like in a world where we didn't have mega rares, like for example, in a world where the scythe didn't exist and they added a set of melee armor that increased your max hit by 1, that wouldn't feel nearly as weird. But now, if they add a melee armor that increases your max hit by 1, it doesn't increase your max hit by 1. It actually increases your max hit by 3 because you have a shadow, and the shadow scales triple the amount with strength bonus, right?
Yeah.
Because every max hit is actually 3 max hits for the shadow. Or sorry, no, my God, the scythe. Sorry, the scythe. So like,
Well, to go for both. I mean, I guess if you had a
yeah,
mage armor, it is doing that triple thing. So that was a little
yeah,
confusing. But
exactly.
yeah, I see your point.
So like the mega rares are designed to never be outscaled because they're designed to scale higher or harder than any other weapon in the game or any other item in the game. But because of that, they can't add items in the game that would scale other items that aren't mega rares. So that's another example of them designing. And I think I made a tweet about this, that I think a lot of people misinterpret it as me saying that everything's designed around mega rares. It's not. I don't think content is designed with like, you need a mega rare to complete this piece of content. But what I mean is that like they're designed to not infringe upon the insane gap between the mega rare and everything before the mega rare. And while someone can point out saying, well, you don't use the T-bow everywhere, it's a niche item, that's true, but that's not going to be true in 15 years when they add another ranged mega rare, let's say, where it's now we're gonna have 2 mega rares that exist in that same space that T-bow does. Not like in the exact same space, but as a ranged mega rare. So now they have to consider design for both of those for the same kind of, or 2 separate niches that exist in the same space. So like right now they are niche in a roundabout sense, Shadow less so than the other 2, but they are niche, but that's not going to be true down the line. And that's where I feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes, where I'm talking to these people that have so much more experience with the game than me. They've been playing the game for so much longer than I have. And I keep asking them like, why are we not considering what the future is going to look like? Where down the line, conceptually, we're going to have 6 mega rares instead of 3. And now it's just going to be a rock, paper, scissors of what the boss is weak to and which mega rare to take out from your bank. And like, is that a more satisfying reality? Like, are you going to be excited to take your scythe out for the 20th year that it's been the best in slot item and you're never going to get another item that's better than it? Like, is that an exciting reality for RuneScape? And more than that, how is that old school? Like, I'm trying to like, maybe I'm like, again, super taking crazy pills here, but and I've only played the game for 2 years, so maybe my history's off, but I would love to get corrected here if one can. But like, I don't remember a single reality where RuneScape was designing an item to never be replaced ever in any situation where it's good. Like the whip was replaced by the chaotic rapier. It was harder to obtain. The rapier was harder to obtain than the whip, and therefore it felt like an incremental like increase over the whip. The whip replaced the D-long, and the whip was much harder to get than the D-long. So like, that was never the case where an item was created specifically to never, ever, ever at any point ever be replaced in the niche where it exists. So to me, it doesn't even strike me as RuneScape, frankly. Like the idea that it's never going to be quote unquote power crept, right? And again, I am a new player. God knows I don't know everything. I am the first to say subjective opinion, totally not something I want to stake out my entire claim on. But like, if someone can point me to a reality where that was the case, and if that's not the case, if it's like this is not that we're going so out of what RuneScape is known for when it comes to itemization, that is a whole separate argument. But in that case, then and maybe I'm arguing against ghosts here, but in that case, don't just dismiss my perspectives because I've only been playing for 2 years. Because by admission, this is not an old school situation. This is a completely new. We're blazing new trails here in the way we itemize the game. And what do you think? Like, do you think that like this reality where we're never going to get a slash weapon better than the scythe? So now down the line, every slash weapon they're adding is never going to be interesting to anyone with a scythe. That to me sounds kind of boring, maybe, like, or do you disagree? Like, do you feel like maybe that's fine because the scythe is so rare and so expensive?
I mean, I think it's just them trying to be careful to not have items trample over others. They are very selective with that. They just kind of pick and choose. For example, I mean, the harmonized staff came out after the Sanguinesti, and then immediately later we have the Shadow. It just totally outclasses it in like every situation, basically, except for PKing, I guess. And it's like, what are we doing here? You just immediately trampled on it. So it's like they just pick and choose what are the things that we trample on or not. And it seems to be the mega rares are just the complete outliers. Like never trample on these. It will be interesting, obviously, to see in the next several years what they end up doing. I would love if we just got rid of the whole notion of mega rares and we're able to just have slight power increases if we need it. I mean, again, in like 5 years from now, I'd be okay if there was something better than a scythe. As long as we kind of dispel the whole mega rare thing and we just see, hey, that was raids 2. We got raids 2. You could still use that. We got this new thing. Again, this is a whole separate conversation. I'm not going to say it's as simple as just adding something better than it. I don't know if we'd go the attachment scape route or whatever we would do. But I in some way, the mega rares are kind of a good thing in a way because it has sort of put a cap on the power that we have. Now, when they're first introduced, obviously you just raise the cap like drastically. But at that point, then it feels like we at least have a decade or maybe a little less of just, okay, we can kind of chill now on the 3 styles. We can kind of fill in the gaps, and then, 5 or 10 years down the line, then we can look at further power increases. But in my view now,
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, I was gonna say I love your perspective there. I completely agree with what you're saying because like I agree that they put a cap on it, but my only thing I just want to really quickly, I'm sorry for interrupting you there, just jump in and maybe add to this and hear your perspective on it is while they did put the cap on it, they also put the cap on on like the way the content value is seen, if that makes sense. Where like while there is now a cap on 3x3 slash or 2x2 slash even for in many cases on the scythe, what that also does is now they can never add another item better than the scythe because it would destroy the scythe, because the scythe is so difficult and takes so long to obtain that no one's ever going to do the 500 400 hour TOB grind when they could just do a 80-hour new boss grind for the item that's better than the scythe, unless they do another 400-hour grind. But in that case, it will just be kind of like we'll just do the new thing then, because you can't really create, because content is so close in difficulty in OSRS in the end game, where like, we see Yama, why would you do Bandos really? I guess maybe that's a hot take there, but like you could just do Yama. The same applies with like Blood Moon versus Bandos, where the armor is so close in how good it is that doing the quote unquote harder or less convenient thing instead of the quote unquote easier, more approachable new thing creates its own issue, right? So how are they going to make a harder grind than the scythe to replace the scythe when it's intended to be the hardest and longest grind in the game? And because content is so yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's all I wanted to jump in. Sorry.
No, I mean that's a good point, but we get to this is just a future problem. I think there's beauty in spacing out raids 5 years out because it feels like raids should be that, okay, this is all the new best in slot stuff we're adding here, and then we can fill in the gaps for the next 5 years until the next raid. The raids, like right now, and we'll talk on raids 4, I'm sure, but I'm okay with them just releasing some shield or like a new prayer or something that's just not even affecting what we currently have. Raids 4 can just be a standalone thing that has really powerful upgrades. I mean, I do have a suggestion. It's sort of like that assassin's armor that has basically no defense but the highest strength bonus. So in some situations, you actually would bring this. So it's sort of like you bring this in some situations and it feels like it because it's not the mega rare coming from Raids 4, it's just the armor set coming out for Raids 4, and it seems like Raids 4 is going to be melee focused personally. And again, we haven't gotten to this conversation yet, but like if we were to come out with a new weapon for a mega rare, I would just love to see something completely different than the 5 tick slow hitting massive truck. I want to see something really fast, and I know
Yeah,
you've heard me talk on that a lot, so
for sure.
but we'll get there.
I want to really quickly just hone in on one final element of this mega rare like discourse, I guess, because I love having this conversation, although I know it's controversial, and I want to clarify that I'm not trying to say that they should remove all mega rares from the game. I'm not trying to suggest any of that. Just giving my perspective on the longevity of this, because the more like, I guess my takeaway is, imagine a universe where we don't have mega rares, and now I feel like that universe opens up the possibility of creating more tangible progression between content. So maybe not as incremental as you're suggesting. So one max hit, even a two max hit sometimes increase on a new big, like beefy end game boss we get maybe every year or two. But because there's no grinds that require like 500, 400 hours to complete, you can create those item specific synergies, those combination items, those quote unquote upgrade scape items to still have value of what preceded those pieces of gear. But because mega rares can never be an upgrade escape item, even if we decide in 20 years that we're bored of the scythe now and we want to upgrade scape it, we can't, because doing an upgrade scape item on a 400-hour grind would literally, no one's gonna do that except the most niche of niche of niche of niche player base, right? It would feel horrible doing a new piece of content, getting spooned an epic upgrade, and then realizing you can't use it until you do another 400-hour grind for a mega rare. Like that to me, and that's on rate. And that to me just sounds so out of the scope of Jagex's game design, and I think that's fair. I wouldn't want that in the game personally. But so like in a world where these items didn't exist like that, where the item grinds were 80, 100 hours, whatever for an upgrade, getting an item that's quote unquote upgrade scape dependent wouldn't feel as daunting, right? Because it's like, okay, well now I just got to do one more boss and I'm gonna have fun doing that. Fine. But in the scope of mega rares, I feel like it's just a hard limit that's never going to be breached, at least from my understanding, and I could be wrong.
Yeah, I just feel like again, 10 years down, 5 years down the line, whenever, I actually don't think it would be the end of the world if there was just a straight up upgrade over the scythe. Again, it's sort of a linguistic thing. I feel like it's just the language we're using when we're saying mega rares. It's just kind of like it's like a conversation stopper. It's like, oh yeah, that's the stuff that can't be trampled on. I mean, if we had just said a harmonized orb was a mega rare, if it's the whole community said that, it wouldn't have been trampled on. It just wouldn't have, because we just kind of all deemed it as something that's not something we can ever trample on again. So I just feel like we have to stray away from this terminology that we're using and just say, okay, there's items, some are better than others. That's the extent of it. And it's partly the reason why I'm totally on board with what you're saying. It's just like you can have some power increases, but just don't make it like 40% increases over the second best in slot, or even 20%. Like just make it so it's a couple max hits at most.
Yeah,
And
no, and that I agree with that. I do agree
yeah,
completely. And I just want to say, like, I feel like the mega rare terminology just is explicitly only a rarity thing. So, like, if they made like if Tebow was a 80 to 100-hour grind instead of a God knows how much long of a grind it is, on rate, of course, then it wouldn't be a mega. It would still be. I think in that case, it would be just a problem of balance. Like, you don't want an item that is as easy to get as other items, but be 40% stronger. But like the mega rare to me is explicitly it is an item that is designed to be, well, mega rare, right? Like incredibly rare, and its power is supposed to be proportionate to its rarity. So like the only reason I would push back against you saying that in 5, 10 years, if we were to power creep the scythe, is that would functionally kill the scythe, because no one's gonna do a scythe grind when the next thing power creeping it is either as long or even shorter of a grind, right? For a better item.
Well, I again, like 5 years from now, I don't think it would be a problem because one, we will have better gear, which means Tob is just going to become simpler and simpler. It already is a pretty easy thing. Tob used to be very daunting when people just had whips, and chains. No, whips, and they're just rolling in there, and it's terrible. I mean, people are just sucking and they're bad at the content. Everything's solved now. You have teammates with full fucking oath plate and scythe and everything, and just like you can literally do a 2-man and get it in the time people were doing, like, 4-mans basically, or 5-mans. I know there's some weird scaling there, so I guess it kind of makes a little bit more sense. But like and again, this is another whole thing with hours and drop rates in general. Scythe, I think you've mentioned a couple times it's like 400 hours. I think Scythe is only around really like the 250 hour mark.
Yeah, it's 250. Yeah, the Scythe is the most no, or it's not the most common, but it's the second most common, and it is 250. I want to clarify. I think the T-bow is the 400 hour grind, right?
Yeah, T-bow, and again, if you're super efficient and you already have a T-bow and you have a ballin' team and you never die, yes, it can be a little bit shorter than that. But I also want to just paint this. This is a sort of side tangent just to get people on board with this hours. So, because I feel like when I throw out that number, I'm getting accused in my own comment section of like, you're just making up lies about the amount of hours it takes to get a T-bow. But listen, if you get, I'm going to be relatively conservative here, but I'll just paint the picture. If you were to just be able to complete a full raid every half hour, a full like chambers, and get 30,000 points, again, very conservative. You can obviously get more and you can do it faster. But assuming all the time scouting and everything else and getting geared and actually running it, you're probably expecting around 30 minutes unless you're like giga sweating and just jumping right back into it. 30,000 points, 30 minutes, you're getting 60,000 points an hour. So a T-bow is almost 30 million points. That means you're doing 1,000 raids at 30 minutes each. That's just 500 hours of deathless raids, getting 30,000 points each time to get a T-bow. 500 hours. And if you speed that up to 25 minutes, let's say, still getting 30,000 points, assuming a few times you die in Ulm and lose 40% of your points, you're looking at 416 hours. That is assuming 25-minute raids consistently, like running up literally from completion to completion, not where I'm counting that downtime of re-gearing for another one. So it's like, that is 416 hours for a T-bow. And people, for some reason, aren't, again, not everybody, but there are some people that are just very clueless as to how extreme these grinds really are. If you go 5 times the rate, which is something that people go 5 times the rate, you're looking at over 2,000 hours to get a fucking pixel item in this game. It's just out of control. So in my view, and I've said this before, but I'm always on board with any weapon that. And I will clarify, efficiently. So again, it doesn't take 400 hours efficiently. If you are in pimped out gear with a pimped out team at Chambers, you could probably get a T-bow in like 250 hours if you're just, and maybe even shorter if you have some weird scaling thing going on. But for the average player, if it's just run in there with a BOFA or whatever, it's way longer than that. So on average, or I don't think the limit should ever exceed for any gear upgrade item, like traditional gear upgrades, even Megarares, should ever be over 150 hours. That's my personal take. I've decided that amount of hours. It used to be 200. I've shortened it down to 150 just because of how much content we have in the game. And if you're a new player, again, if you're a player that's been maxed for 5 years and has all the best in slot gear, that's terrible. You just want the next thing to be super, super gate kept because it's the only content you're going to be fucking doing because you've completed everything else. You got the gilded goddamn collection log staff and you're still just playing that one account. Yeah, this game, I'm sorry, but like we have to balance the game around the majority of the players, not just around like the 0.0001% of the player base. So I do think that going forward, we should really tone back the amount of hours. 150 hours is extreme, by the way. That is like so many. Most games you complete in 50 hours to 100 hours. Like the whole fucking game is completed to get one item.
That's like a longer game. I just want to clarify. That's a longer game too. 150
that's
to 100
a long
hours.
game
That's a long
too.
game. Yeah.
That's a long game. And listen, the J mods are even saying recently they want to just not have as many items in like at bosses. So like limit it to like 3 or 4 items max that you're getting, like 3 or 4 unique items that you're getting. Raids can be a little bit different, maybe 5 or 6, but For the most part, if you limit the amount of items, you can actually shorten the grinds, because if you're chasing 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 items, like Nightmare, then you kind of have this balancing issue where you don't want everything to be shorter in hours, because then you kind of just get all these other things spooned, because on the way there you're getting like 5 other items. So you can shorten the grinds of bosses if you just limit the amount of uniques coming in. That makes perfect sense. Mod Arcane talked about that on your conversation as well. I'm just kind
Yeah.
of reiterating what he
And I
said.
completely agree with him, by the way. I completely agree with him. I hate
Yeah.
bosses with like 8 uniques. It sucks. It sucks.
Yeah, and it makes it so every single item needs to be a longer grind, because you don't want to just be spitting out items every 5 hours if the grind's only 50 hours and there's 10 items on it. So
And the dupe issue as well with large drop tables is just miserable. On top of that,
yeah, so that's a whole nother can of worms to open. But I just feel like in the future, if we learn from our mistakes, one, I'm still pushing for a chambers drop rate rebalance. Just make everything more common, seriously, and then just adjust the prayer scrolls. I know I've seen brilliant ideas on how to solve that. Maybe even just get rid of prayer scrolls from the CMs and stuff. Just clean up the place, make it way more common for things. This is raids 1 we're talking about. We're going to be getting raids 4, then raids 5, then raid 6. Are we still going to, just until the end of time, have a 400-hour grind for a mega rare that was raids 1? I don't think it's necessary. We could literally double the drop rates across the board. The economy would obviously have some like hiccup to it, but Jagex is manipulating the economy anyway. They can literally control the amount of T-bows that come into the game. They can just delete them en masse if they wanted to. They have that luxury. So the things that we actually care about, the price tags we care about, they can just manipulate it. So going forward, it would be cool if we just shave the amount of hours on these lower pieces of content, because again, to your point, the thing you're fearful of, which makes sense in our current state, but if we had Raids 5 come out that drops something just objectively better than a Scythe, it can just be a harder piece of content that almost requires the Scythe to be in there, because you just need such massive amounts of DPS to even get a clear. They could literally balance things around, like, you just need crazy DPS because you're on a time limit in this room, and if you don't have the gear for it, you're fucked. I don't know if that would be a great game design personally, but I'm just throwing out an example. But like, getting things done quickly, it could require that you already have a Scythe to even get involved in this raid. And then you just have something that's like a Scythe, but just has, again, in theory, I'm just on paper, has an extra max hit or something, or an extra couple max hit. And so it technically is better than the Scythe now in every situation, but this grind is way more hard, and you almost need a Scythe to even engage with it in the first place. And then, yes, Raids 2 is devalued, but we're at Raids 5 now, and we're 10 years later. It's like, it's okay at that point to devalue these things, because the Scythe is still going to have an amazing place. And if this new best in slot weapon actually has a hefty price to actually using it, if it actually requires a lot of GP to use, then it actually is balanced, because you could still use a Scythe that's relatively cheap these days, charging wise. And also the price will just decline, and that is okay to have Raids 2 5 years down the line from now have the Scythe only be like 300 mil or whatever. It's like, that's okay, because we have the new Giga Chad Scythe over here, and TOB has become progressively easier because of all these new gear upgrades we get. So again, in my view, I just don't see it as a big problem, and we're looking at not the current day right now, but we're looking 5 years down the line, which the game is going to be way different.
Yeah, I'm always like, because I agree with the general ethos. My stopping point is always because of how long mega rares take, and because of how powerful they are.
Yeah.
Right, like their length is because of how powerful they are, and my argument there is not to make them less long of a grind, although T-bow arguably yes, but mostly the mega rares, I'm fine with how long they are because of how powerful they are. I just wish they weren't that powerful, so we had a reason to not have them be that long, almost. Where like,
Totally.
because the core problem, right, is I don't even know what it looks like to power creep the Scythe, frankly. Because do we just have to make another weapon that scales even harder with strength? And the unfortunate side of that is that creates a ton of design baggage now with strength armor, because now we can't do another bump in strength armor quality if we do another tier above Torva at some point down the line. That's going to be like 5 max hits instead of 3 now for the new Scythe 2.0. And like, that to me, now we're really getting into design debts territory there, where every other upgrade, every other piece of armor that we get starts to suffer in regard to being satisfying to obtain, because we need to design it around having a 5x scaling weapon that needs to outscale the 3x scaling weapon, as an example. And that's why, like, again, designing items specifically with their unique scaling features that the Scythe and other Mega Rares have, poses issues with creating armor and utility items that disproportionately affect those items in particular. And by power creeping those items, we have to create even higher scaling systems. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, one of the solutions to that, this is something I offered. If we were to come out with a 2-tick melee weapon, for example, or a 3-tick, I would love a 2-tick melee weapon personally. It'd be super difficult to use and maintain that DPS, which would be so unique about it. If we were to come out with that, first off, the stats would basically have to be negative at this point if you didn't do any sort of scaling, because like the ham joint alone has 0 stats, and like if you're rocking full Torva, full max, you're 3-tick and still like 45s with something that has 0 stats. Like the weapon doesn't even need to have stats. You're just totally demolishing things. So the solution to it is to see your gear. So like, just imagine you're at the gear screen, looking at your character and the amount of strength bonus you have with 0 weapon equipped. You take that number and then you basically divide it. So for example, if it's and again, this is a little bit more in depth, I'm just going to break it down in a simple way. Obviously, there's much more sort of complexity to this, but you basically just make it so if it's a 5-tick weapon, you get a certain multiplier on that strength number that it's showing. And then if it's a 2-tick weapon, it's slashed by, 40%. So the 2-tick weapon is not benefiting every single 2 ticks from that sheer amount of other gear that you're rocking in terms of strength bonus. It's slashed proportionately to the speed itself. So you're not going to have these issues with like right now, the blowpipe, as much range strength as you keep adding, the blowpipe just becomes more and more exponentially powerful because it's just attacking at a faster rate. If you had a weapon, just for an extreme example, that was 10 ticks, and you just increased your range strength by 10, but this weapon is attacking every 10 ticks, that barely did anything. But if your weapon was attacking every 1 tick, now you have a 10 strength bonus every fucking tick, and it's just stacking on. So the way to solve that is to just have your strength bonus across gear just be proportionate. That would have to be some formula they decide in the future. And that basically solves a lot of issues. It solves the kind of Scythe issue with the exponential scaling later down the road. It also solves some of the issues with exponential and multiplicative bonuses, such as like Ember Light and Arc Light and stuff, when they have like a 70% or 75% or whatever the damage scaling is there. That all can be kind of shaved down depending. And like the Dragon Hunter Lance has a 20% multiplier on it. Like if you were to come out with some other thing with a multiplier, like you can scale everything proportionally to your gear to make it so nothing is an outlier that just, I don't know, would ruin the game. So I want to see variable like attack speeds, not variable between like where one weapon has like multiple different attack speeds. I think that's the wrong route to take, but I would just love to see faster attacking weapons and other things like that. And then the slower attacking weapons, which by the way just feel shitty to use anyway. Like using a 6-tick or 7-tick weapon is terrible, but you technically could have something like that, and then it's proportionally scaled. So your gear, if you have 100 strength bonus, if you're using a 7-tick weapon, that all of a sudden becomes like 150 strength bonus, just because it's going to proportionally scale to the speed of your weapon. And again, something that's a little bit complicated. You'd have to go into the formula. Some gigabrains would have to figure out how that proportionality works, but that's a solution to it ultimately.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one, because I feel like right now we're course correcting potential issues that we're seeing based on design decisions from like a decade ago at this point. And that's always my concern with addressing like the mega rare problem, if we want to call it a problem, where like I'm looking at it from my perspective as a newish player who is in the end game now, who's doing the end game grinds, and I'm not conceptually against long grinds. I mean, there's a reason I'm maxing my account. It's because obviously I'm not conceptually against long grinds, but like it's more so like the design debt, if you want to call it that, that is laid out because of certain decisions made, because they sound great in the, because like, yeah, like as you pointed out, Cox had 3 armor sets at one point, like all this kind of stuff, and that makes sense. It's the first of its kind. they didn't have a lot of end game at the time. This was going to be something we do for years and years and years and years and years. But now that the end game is really filled out and continues to be more and more filled out, there really is no reason to front load such an insane unhinged grind on a single piece of content. Now we have content diversity conceptually. We do have content diversity now, especially in the end game, or more so in the end game than we did back in 2016, 2017, or whatever. Like, now there's not really that need anymore to do that front loading on 17 different pieces of gear coming from a single place. But because that already was added, it's like, how do we adjust that without upsetting people? And of course, I agree with you. I'd want to see a Cox table rebalance. I do want to see that. I think there's no reason conceptually not to have that other than economic concerns. But unfortunately, there's just this I guess pressure that happens where the positive design decision isn't always the best design decision in the scope of OSRS and the way content is viewed. And that's something that I've had to very slowly accustom myself to. I think it's Mod Rice who told this to me, where he's like, theory wise, listen, okay, in any other game, your suggestion here might be great, but for OSRS, it just doesn't work, because sometimes the worst design decision is the better one for the game for OSRS. And I'm like, okay, like I get it. Mod Rice is like the fucking game design philosopher, frankly. Like, in regard to how his perspectives have changed my perspectives on the game, because he's right ultimately. But also, it's a hard thing to wrap my own brain around sometimes when talking about these more complicated and end game specific issues. So no, and I appreciate obviously that your perspectives on it, because it's a very interesting ongoing conversation, and I'm sure it's going to be one that gets even more interesting and ongoing when we start seeing what the propositions for rates for are. You know.
Yeah, I want to just touch on one more thing before we move on, which
Of
is,
course.
people have this fear of, if you were to ever change Chambers drop rates, all of a sudden everything's going to go to shit. The whole game is going to be fucked up. The economy is going to be fucked up. Listen, they literally have changed drastically the drop table, or the drop rates, excuse me, of Fasani's Nightmare and Nightmare multiple times, massive slashes to the amount of time it takes to kill, and then just the drop rates in general. Literally nobody ever once on any social media had ever complained about the price of those items really just shooting down and stuff. I mean, one, the items suck, so there's a difference in Chambers. Chambers would still have best in slot Ancestral, best in slot Tebow, best in slot Dragon Claws, like, they still have so much fucking stuff to offer. So even if you were to slash the time it takes to complete Chambers in half, you would be chasing the best in slot items. They still have an immense value. The problem with Nightmare is they just had this inflated value because the fucking grind took like 6,000 goddamn hours to complete. And so it's like nobody has this shit. It's just like flex stuff basically. And now all the niches that they did have, like hitting Warhammers, is completely removed because we have the Yamahorn now. And I'm just thinking to myself, literally nobody ever had an issue with any of that stuff. And so the fear, I remember even potentially being like, oh yeah, maybe that would be a devastating blow to the economy. It just won't. It really won't. Like, overnight, they could just say, hey, again, I know it's still a hot take. I understand that fully. And I understand that the JMods are not going to be doing this without a full community discussion about it. But if they were to just randomly overnight be like, hey, we just increase the drop rates at Chambers by 50%, just across the board. We kept the prayer scrolls the way they are, but everything else has just been drastically increased. Have fun. Literally, I think there would just be a huge surge of players just having fun at Chambers, pulling more purples. The prices would still be relatively good. And then as soon as the prices hit a certain point where they're not worth grinding for, people just jump over to other content until they rebalance up. This is supply and demand. It's like simple economics. It's like, as soon as it's not worth grinding, people just go to the other piece of content and do it until it finally balances out, which is very automatic. Like, it just automatically balances out to a certain price point. And Jagex has the luxury of manipulating the prices anyway, because they can just sync T-bows as much as they want. They can sync Ancestral. They can sync this kind of shit to arbitrarily have a certain price that people want it to be at, which again is silly, because when you see Nightmare items, is there any sort of like obsession with this? The harmonized orb was 2 bill at one point. Why is it not 2 bill? Push it up to 2 bill again. Do whatever it takes to get that item back up to 2 bill. Nobody fucking cares. It's just, again, it's the language. It's the like conceptual. This is a mega rare. It needs to maintain a 1 bill plus value until the end of time. It's just, can we get that fucking idea out of our heads? Like, it's okay to make the game reasonable, have grinds be reasonable. Again, Even if you were to double the drop rates overnight with the Tebow would still be over 200 hours for most players. It would be a little bit faster for others, but that's kind of how it goes. The same thing with Scythe. Scythe is generally considered 250 hours. For Giga Chads, it's like a fucking 150 or even fewer hours because they just have best in slot and they're running duos nonstop and they're just pulling purple after purple. So, but for the average player, it's an insane grind. And there would literally not be much damage had if Raids 1 had a drop rate rework. I really hold that strongly, like that opinion and that view. I just don't think there would be any catastrophic thing that happens. Again, Jagex has full control over the market too. They can just arbitrarily set prices at this point.
Is that what you want to see in the summer sweep up? If you had to pick one thing to see in the summer sweep up, would it be a raids Cox raids rebalance, or
if I could see one thing from the chambers or
no,
the
summer sweep
the
up.
summer sweep up, I would see hardwood blowpipes be made better. No, I'm kidding. No, one thing. I mean, that is my latest obsession with just how fucking underpowered those things are. But one thing, yeah. I mean, again, like there's a lot of things I'd love to see, but if it was just one thing and it was PVM focused, definitely a chambers drop rate change. And it could be a little bit more complex than just saying double the rates. I would love to see prayer scrolls maybe even just be a one-time drop you get so you're not continuously getting dupes of them. That would be cool. Making it so the challenge mode has a higher chance, sort of like that scaling that they did with Toa, where you have a higher chance of the shadow, the higher the invocation you go up. That they could do a similar system with chambers. So if you're running the CMs, slightly higher chance of pulling the mega rares rather than the normal stuff. So yeah, I would love to see that.
I wonder if in a Chambers of Xeric rebalance, let's say in a world where they somehow find a way to remove the 2 prayer scrolls off the table, which would increase all unique loot by 60%, right? And in that case, I think that taking off the Elder Maul and the Kodai from the Mega Rare table and putting it on the standard table, and then just buffing those rates to absorb the 60% of the not just of those 2 items, but of all the uniques together to absorb the 60% increase from the prayer scrolls, which I think if they all those items were to absorb that, we would only see like a 10 to 15% increased or maybe even 20% increase to the unique chances, which is fine if we're seeing less dupes of the most useless bullshit uniques ever. Like that wouldn't, I think, destroy any individual price. Ancestral is still going to be well over 100 mil. The Bulwark is still going to be 50 odd mil. All that kind of stuff. But right, Bulwark, yeah, no,
Mhm.
no, the Buckler,
Wait,
the Buckler,
what?
the Buckler is
Oh
going
yeah.
to be 50. Yeah, not the Bulwark. The Bulwark is, who cares? But when it comes to like, I'd love to see something like that, but I know it's a complicated topic. I know the devs are constantly pulling their hair out when it comes to Chambers of Xeric, and I don't envy them to make that executive call and to start doing that like poll for how to figure out Chambers of Xeric. But that's a fair wish. That's a fair wish. I think for me, I want to see them. If I'm just going something simple, I want to see them standardize the group version of Nightmare and make it more like Fasani's Nightmare. So I can go in there with my duo group Ironman partner and just farm that boss. I think it would be a lot more fun as a duo. But right now, because of the way the chip damage works and the weird scaling of it, it just doesn't feel fun to do at all. But if they were to just standardize it by making it mechanically a little bit harder, but also removing like the disproportionate ridiculous chip damage and all that kind of stuff, that could be a fun way to do for the regular Nightmare, to make it like a Yama-esque encounter maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I would love it if they just fully scrapped that additional portal up the stairs where Fasani's is. Just got rid of normal Nightmare and put where normal Nightmare is, add that as Fasani's, and then you can do it up to 5 people. So your
Yeah.
group Iron Man can all run in there with 5 people. You can also duo it. You can also solo it. It's the same goddamn fight. It's the same scaling. You can just go in there and fuck it up if you want to do it a 5-man. The same drop rates will be had. Maybe there could be some division of so it's not just the person that did the most damage is going to get it. Obviously, I think that is archaic at this point. But yeah, if you could just run in there with 5 people and there's barely any scaling, so you just go in there, and if you're like new at it, you can have people like help speed the fight along. That'd be fucking cool. Even if it was just duoing it, I think 5-man could just appeal to those
Yeah. I don't
games out there.
At this
But yeah,
point, I just don't see an issue with that, and it doesn't seem like it would be like the most insane like dev thing ever, right? You already have the Fasani's fight.
yeah,
Like, I don't think it would be ridiculous to do something like that. I would love to see that. Simultaneously, I would also just add one more thing. I'd love to see them rebalance the Soul Reaper axe. What an underwhelming,
yeah.
obnoxious weapon that weapon is. What a obnoxious way to spend 150 hours grinding for it, only to get an item that I haven't used a single time because it's so annoying and so obnoxious. Oh, I hate it so much. And now that
Yeah.
we have what's it called, the really awesome League's cosmetic ornament kit they're adding for it. What a great time, right? To just touch it up, just touch just like a little bit of a tweaker on the Soul Reaper axe, maybe dropping the stacks to 3, maybe reworking the stat mechanic in general, like things like that. I think to me, realistically, I don't know how you feel about this, but just the Soul Reaper axe should just be an upgrade over the Noxious Halberd. It is ridiculous to me that it comes from a substantially harder boss, or a set of substantially harder bosses, and is like 2 times longer a grind, and yet is worse in some
At least.
situations.
Yeah.
That is crazy to me. And there's so much space between the Noxious Halberd and the Scythe. The Soul Reaper axe can inhabit that space, in my opinion, pretty readily.
Yeah, I am totally on board with the Soul Reaper axe 100%. Even if it was just increase this, I mean, literally, you could basically keep everything the same. If you wanted, and just make the slash bonus go. I have it pulled up here for like 134 to like 160. Just some really fucking accurate thing that actually feels like you're just barely missing. I know it already is pretty highly accurate, but like just drastically increasing that accuracy would already kind of put it in a nice spot, a nicer spot, just
Yeah.
so it has that sort of niche against higher defense stuff. But there's a whole range of things you could do to it, like again, lowering the stacks and stuff, or just completely changing the whole special mechanic anyway to something that's a lot more fun and a lot more engaging and a lot more just interesting. So
Yeah,
totally on
agreed.
board with that.
Instead of an upkeep mechanic, it could be something a lot more fun. And it can even have like a stack mechanic. It just needs to be not one where you're taking damage and dealing slightly more damage. Like, it's crazy to me
Yeah.
that even with full 5 stacks, it's still like 25% worse than a Scythe on most slash weak enemies. It's so ridiculous that like you need that much upkeep, and the 56 damage or whatever that you take, or 45 damage that you take from getting the stacks up, is just so like, oh my god, bro. Like, why do we need to suffer just so we can, God forbid the Scythe has an item that's within 20% of its output or whatever. But I don't know.
And it's just so
I
fucking rare too. It's insanely
Yeah,
rare.
yeah, it's such a rare. I mean, yeah, it's a 150-hour grind, I think. Is how long it took me to get mine, and it sucks because I was like, maybe I could use it to farm Sarachnis eggs. Like, that's like my, wow, I can
Mhm.
actually use it. But then I simmed it and I realized just going Blood Moon is better. So I'm like, well, never mind.
But it's like
Oops.
you hear 150 hours or whatever, but then you see like the average Iron Man that would want to go for this weapon. And let's compare it to the Noxious Halley. Noxious Halley, all you need is a fucking bludgeon. You don't even need a bludgeon. You just go in with a zombie axe and just
That's what I did. Yep.
kill a Raxor, just a few hundred times. Go get your Noxious Halley, boom, you're done. With this other thing, it's like if you don't have a T-bow or a ZCB at Leviathan, you're already fucked. You're already in a shitty position to like, this is going to be a terrible fight now. And then you got Vardorvis. If you don't have a Noxious Halley in the first place, you're getting fucked up, and you probably don't have a Scythe because you're an early Iron Man that's just going for your ult. Like on Squat Cam, luckily I did spoon a Noxious Halley, but if I didn't have a Noxious Halley, I'd be using a fucking whip the whole goddamn time. Maybe a tent whip for a little bit because I actually ended up taking like 1750 kills for my Ultor. Never even got the axe piece in the first place. So I mean, that alone took like 80 hours. It was like I think it was like 70 hours of just like real time, just at Vardorvis. I went, dry. I still didn't get it. Like, and then if I wanted to go to Duke, I don't have a Scythe again. I don't have a Soul Reaper Axe to grind out Duke. I don't have this. Like, as a main account, yes, it can be 150 hours. But for anybody that's just going for the weapon, and that will be an upgrade, it's just silly because everything is way more dragged out. And then Whisper, of course, if you don't have a Shadow, you probably don't have a Sanguinesti either because maybe you haven't done the raids yet, and this is sort of like getting you into the raids. You're grinding it with a fucking trident? Like,
Oh my god.
Jesus
Yep.
Christ, 4 minute
That's what I
kills
did.
here. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
way more terrible.
yeah, my Soul Reaper grind was crazy. I mean, I did I think 2.2k of Ardorvis to get my items from him. It was, I mean, as much
Fuck.
as I love Ardorvis, I really do love him. It's a great fight, but like, and it's short, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, it's like for what, right? For 1 out of 4 pieces, like God forbid you go dry on the other fights. And I got Spoon on Duke, which is nice because I didn't enjoy Duke at all. As you pointed, I think It's funny. Leviathan, I do like Leviathan a lot, and I did do him with Bofa, obviously, and I didn't like hate it with Bofa. It's fine. Whisperer with a trident, which is how I did Whisperer, is like it's truly like mind melting how obnoxious it is. It's like, yeah, as you said, 4.5 minute kills, because
Yep.
it's that's probably one of the only fights in the entire game where in my mind it's designed around having a shadow, because the gap between shadow and other
Yeah.
magic weapons at that time was so insane that like I cannot imagine them designing that fight being like, yeah, 4.5 minute average kills, awesome. Like, no, bro. Like, you get 2.5 minute, 3 minute kills with a shadow. It's so much less obnoxious. Nowadays, the IAC has really alleviated that. Obviously, I did it far before the IAC, but you know, yeah. So for a weapon that's literally a side grade on like 2 pieces of content, that's in unhinged. That's an unhinged proposition, in my opinion. I would much rather have them touch that up. I would love, please, please, Jagex, touch up the Soul Reaper axe for the summer sweep up. That would be so awesome. Um,
Yeah.
I know this is going to be a hard swerve here, but I know it's a topic you feel passionately about. The PvP coffer idea. That's what you messaged me. Like, we got to talk about this. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just backstory. I know much of my audience has heard this idea a lot, and I've been advocating it for years, and it's been very cleaned up. It feels like it's at a point now where all the loose ends are tied up, and it feels like there's no issues with it. I've talked with multiple people about it. I've had Mod Manked listen to my episode with Vader. So for anybody that wants the whole deep dive on this PvP coffer, me and this guy named Vader, Vador, went into like the deep dive of just everything, trying to tie up every loose end, trying to figure out exactly how it would function, and like kind of brainstorming. So in that conversation, we don't have it all figured out until the end of the conversation. So it's just really fascinating to kind of hear our perspectives on it. Mod Manked and others in the Jagex Discord were talking about it. It was linked to them, and Mod Manked is like, holy shit, like this is actually a good idea that could honestly solve a lot of the issues with PvP. And then Frame jumped in, Eliop jumped in, some others jumped in, and they're like, okay, yeah, like at that point, everybody is just so sick and tired. Anybody that's actively PKing is just so sick and tired of just having the wilderness be fully fucking dead, and just it's been in a terrible spot for like a decade. And they just want it to be fun. Everyone's just getting older, and they're like, okay, we don't care about this stupid status quo that we're trying to maintain. That's like wilderness always needs to be this certain way. It's like, no, we can't ever change it. First of all, the wilderness is constantly changing. It's changed so goddamn much over the years. But the biggest problem right now with the wilderness is the fact that there's just no incentive for half the player base to be out there fighting back. And so it ends up just being this whole like teleport out. Like the best way to engage in PvP as the prey is just teleport. Just not engage, basically. Just get the fuck out, log out, teleport, whatever. As soon as you possibly can. As soon as you see a name, teleport, log out. That's terrible. And now they're setting up arbitrary restrictions where you can't teleport out for like fucking 3 seconds, or like you can't do certain activities. Like there's just so much random arbitrary rules in the wilderness just because of, I think, in my view, this one issue, which is incentive. There's no incentive for an Iron Man or an Ultimate Iron Man or a group Iron Man or a hardcore Iron Man or anybody to fucking fight back. So just change the incentive structure. How do you do that? How do you do that without breaking the Iron Man game mode? Well, you introduce a PvP coffer. This PvP coffer basically is a GP in, GP out thing. There is no sort of death coffer thing where it's taking a GE value. There can be no manipulation in regards to like skewing an item's price at the Grand Exchange to get more gold or whatever. It's just GP in, GP out. So how it works is, and it's an opt-in, opt-out system. So nobody's forced to do this, but it would ultimately be a convenience. Basically how it goes is, in the Ferox Enclave, I imagine there would be a coffer that you run to. You can deposit gold into there. And then when you go out in the wilderness, whatever you're risking, when you check your price on the little gear tab, when you check, view items kept on death, it'll have a little guide risk value. That is now the money that you're risking from your coffer when you die. So let's just say you run out there and your risk is 1 mil GP. You're running out there. If you now die to somebody, a loot key is dropped, and that loot key has 1 mil in it. And to solve the issue, this is one of the issues that I'll bring up right now. One of the issues is PKers felt like you would lose that charm of opening up a key and seeing what you just PK'd. Well, that's an easy solution. What you do is just literally make it look like this is the shit that you just killed from this player. So you see the items that you killed. The key can still have all the items that you would have technically killed. But then you just click the cash out button. Cash out button, boom, there's your gold. It's inserted into your coffer now if you're opted in. If you're not opted out, or if you're opted out, you just get the gold right there as you loot the chest. And that's it. And so the person that died doesn't actually lose any of their items. They didn't lose any of their worn equipment or anything on them. They respawn in their location with everything on them as long as the coffer covered the cost. And they just lost 1 mil from their coffer. Boom. End of story. You move on with your day. You can go back out in the wilderness, have some fun. In fact, we even offered a suggestion, because I could really go into specifics here. I'm just trying to paint the overview of it. But basically, in order to opt into this coffer system, because of all the conveniences, there would also be a 10% fee, or maybe even a little bit higher fee, maybe a 15% fee where 10% goes, or maybe 5% goes to the PKer. So it's actually a good thing to be opted into this system because it means you're actually going to be making more money. And then, 5 or 10% can actually just exit from the game. So this sort of convenience thing does have an economic value to it where gold's leaving the game. Players are actually making more money from PKing, and people are just risking more. If I'm an Iron Man now running out to do my clue scroll and I have, 100 mil in my coffer because I've just loaded it up, I wouldn't mind risking my master scroll stack and my fucking blowpipe and my claws and everything else out there. It's like, I'm risking 30 mil. Fuck it. I'll just go out there because 99% of the time I'm totally good anyway. But now PKer's like, ooh, baby, I'm going to kill this guy because he's probably risking a lot more. And if you die, you lost that amount of money. But it's not like it's huge pit in your stomach and horrible thing when you lose a valuable item on an Iron Man. No, I mean, you're just right back into the action. You respawn, you just continue on with your day and go back out there. So it's a lot more snappy. Everything's more convenient. The gearing back up is not even an issue anymore. And then there's incentive for Iron Men to fight back. There's the incentive that if you now, as an Iron Man, anti-PK, if somebody comes at you, there is a little bit of incentive to fight back, because if you kill the PKer, that loot key goes into your coffer. The Iron Man cannot withdraw from the coffer ever. They can only deposit, but the loot keys that they end up PKing become part of their coffer, which will pay for future deaths of theirs. So that's the sort of system that's in place. Now, if a PKer decided to spite not opt in or whatever, just doesn't want to opt in or just doesn't have the money, then the Iron Man, if they did kill them, would just get a loot key with normal items, and they would just have to discard it or drop it over to a main or whatever. I don't think that would be majority of cases. I think most players would just realize, okay, opting into the system is just way more convenient and way more fun for everybody, because when you die, you're just right back into the action. So that's the overall theme of it. And then in just my last conversation actually with Espada yesterday, one of the cool things about this sort of system is balancing the wilderness more appropriately. So again, there's so much more I could talk about. I hope I covered most of the bases right there. There's probably a lot of questions for people initially hearing this. Again, if you want the whole deep dive, listen to the Vader episode. Sorry for plugging my own stuff, but hopefully people will. So anyway, the cool thing about this solution is it adds this ability to balance the wilderness more completely. So right now, when you enter the wilderness, you can go up to like level 55 wildy. And so if you're a level 70, you can now be attacked by a level 125. It's just like you're going to get fucked, basically, if you get caught in between a fight with that. However, and again, this is not part of necessarily the PvP coffer solution, so just split this off into a separate tangent. This does not need to be added, but it is just a cool idea that we were talking about. Is imagine if the combat levels are so skewed and so different, what if there was just a percentage of the gold lost from you? So if you're opted into the system, you're a level 70 account that's running out there with a mil worth of risk, and then you get killed by somebody that's 50 levels higher than you. What if that gets proportionately cut? So it's calculating who you die to, and it's gauging combat level. Maybe instead of losing that 1 mil, you only lose 200K now, because just the disparity was so extreme. It was so unfair. and you are basically like a little bug to this guy that's just going to destroy you. So now you don't lose as much. So there's that option to make things a little bit more balanced, a little bit more fair. And then it could be the opposite, where if the level 70 kills the level 120, how, if you're opted into the system, your risk is actually more extreme. So you're going to lose 3 times the amount. So if you were risking 20 mil, now 60 mil is jacked from you because of that risk. So this would be a more, again, this is a separate conversation entirely of this whole balancing thing, but it just allows you to fight up rather than the constant fighting down. So fighting up actually becomes an incentive. So you'd want to make an account build that is a lower level, that has more risk to it, but you're actually profiting more by killing upward. You know what I mean? So you can add these different layers of complexity to the wilderness. Again, this would almost inevitably need to be a matter of, well, actually, I guess technically you wouldn't actually be obligated to be opted into the system. The more I was thinking about it right there, I was like, maybe this would be a forced opt-in at this point, but no, it still doesn't need to be, because if you want the luxury of benefiting from it, so if you're a lower combat and you want the benefit of it, you would opt into the system, obviously, because then you'd get multipliers on the loot that you kill, or the players that you kill. And then for the players that are the low levels and the victims out there, they can also opt into the system, and they know that when they die to somebody that's way more geared and way more stacked than them, they're not going to lose everything. They're just going to lose a proportionate value of it. And everything gets cleaned up because you're just dealing with GP to GP. So everything can be scaled very cleanly. There's not like, okay, you maybe lose this item because everything's still item based. No, it's just GP based. Everything's GP, everything's loot keys with GP values. And I think ultimately, in my view, that's the future of the wilderness. Personally, I know some people just disagree. And I think most of it just comes from a state of nostalgia where, like, no, the wilderness always needs to be what it is for the next 25 years. It can never change ever. I'm just completely opposed to that, because we've seen that slow decay of the wilderness year after year after year, and nothing's fucking fixing, and all the PKers are leaving and swarming to like hardcore Ironman modes and PVMing and stuff. Like, just the wilderness is the most shitty space. And again, just to reiterate on that last point, and then I'll let you share all your thoughts, is it's an incentive problem. It's all incentives. We need all players to be out there with an incentive to fight back and an incentive to engage, and just more fun and less of that terrible feeling when you die. Just, we got to get rid of that. Most players are not PKers, and the only people really complaining about this are just people that have all the odds in their favor. Most people that don't want this change is because they realize they actually like killing loot pinatas. They like the sort of domination aspect of the wilderness, where you just dominate somebody and it's just fucking completely unfair for somebody, which is just not a healthy game mechanic. It just isn't. And so unfortunately for those players that just love the domination and love the just fucking loot pinatas, this would obviously affect you negatively, because you're not going to have that extreme, power dynamic in your favor.
I have a cool question about this, just before I jump in to give my thoughts. What is the incentive to risk more under the system? Like, if you want to do a 10 million in your coffer, like, what's the incentive to do that?
So you're just saying risking more just going out into the wilderness?
Well, yeah, maybe I missed like a crucial element here, and it could very well be the case. Where like, so you have a coffer in Ferox, you put money into that coffer, GP in, you can't take it out. And that's the money
you can take it out as a main. You just can't take it out as an Iron Man.
As an Iron, yeah, my bad. And that's the amount you're risking when you go into the wilderness, correct?
No. What you're risking is what's on you. It's just the coffer needs to be able to cover.
Okay, it needs to cover the cost. That makes sense.
Yes.
That actually makes sense. Yeah. Okay. No, that actually makes total sense. That clarification clarified every other question I had. So yeah, that makes total sense, because I had framed on my show a couple episodes ago, and it was an awesome conversation, honestly, because it was mostly about PvP.
It was great.
Yeah, it was mostly about PvP and figuring things out. And we also kind of arrived. I think I pitched him an idea I had about wilderness only clue scrolls, and how to incentivize people to actually engage with them without feeling like it's the most obnoxious, miserable thing ever. Which I know a lot of people hate wilderness clue scroll steps, because it's just tedious. It's just annoying and tedious for nothing more than just being an annoying and tedious, because you don't want to risk the X, Y, and Z of not banking your graceful, not banking your loot pouch, or your rune pouch and all that. So we had that idea of like, the amount you're risking in the wilderness when completing a clue scroll that's wilderness specific is proportionally increasing your reward of that clue scroll. And in this coffer system, while not identical, obviously, it kind of fits that same level of incentive and convenience merging together, which is, in my opinion, exactly how you make the wilderness a little bit more appealing to, Iron Men, frankly. Like, to me, if Iron Man had the opportunity to fight back, and I know what some people are going to say, well, Iron Man, you chose to restrict yourself, blah, blah, blah. Brother, it's 30% or something of the player base, right? Like, whether you like it or not, we kind of have to make Iron Man engage in the content. But, you can be as upset about it as you want, but at the end of the day, if they're not doing it and the wilderness continues to die, no one benefits. So,
Yeah.
having a compromise there of giving Iron Man a reason to do it without just feeling like shit and then voting no on every poll is gonna heavily, I think, incentivize Jagex to actually fix the wilderness without doing a, yearly, we're making QOL to the Rev caves, like, which I don't think is enough to make the wilderness appealing. And giving them that incentive of, okay, you get something active out of killing someone is really cool. Like, I know that there was a semi-similar idea I pitched on the Frame podcast, which is just like, if an Iron Man kills someone, like, there's like maybe a cap to it, like 300k or something. It just goes to your death scoffer. Like, that can be manipulated. That can be fucked up because you could just feed an Iron Man kills and give them an infinite death scoffer. Even then, I would say that is a super, super, super low cost to what could effectually make Iron Man a more like entertaining thing to engage with in the wilderness specifically, if we want to see future wilderness updates. And I do want to see future wilderness updates. I think the wilderness is a very unique feature of the game that I want to see expanded on. So yeah.
Yeah, let me just address that, because this is always one of the comments that comes when people first hear this idea. Their first fear is, okay, you've completely missed the point where you can just kill your main out in the wilderness and just jack all that money and put it in your Iron Man's coffer. And I say, yeah, that's totally okay. The Iron Man can't withdraw it, so all it is just covering their losses. So let's just say you had a bill GP just lingering on a main account and you just dumped it in your Iron Man coffer. Okay, now it's there. It's going to pay for the deaths, but like, what is that doing? Other than just allowing an Iron Man to feel a little bit safer, risking more? Well, that's just more risk for you to go kill. And the other thing is like, if that's a problem to anybody, you're not looking at the game in a healthy way. You're looking at, I want to punish Iron Man. I want to like, this needs to hurt them. Like, I need to hurt them in order to get pleasure from PKing. There's a lot of PKers out there that actually just are a little bit like psychopathic. Not everybody, of course, but there are definitely some that they feed off of the misery of others. So like, that's the reason they kind of like gravitate toward wilderness. Again, not all PKers. I need to make that very clear. But there are some that is the reason why they like killing people. It's not about the loot. They don't care about the loot. They could just fucking destroy the key. They just love killing people. So we don't need to cater to that. We can cater to, yes, we still have the high risk, high reward. In fact, this is even higher risk, because if there is a 10% additional cost of this, you're actually risking 10% more than you are normally. And it's just encouraging people to just bring out more, because they're just lazy. They just don't want to bank the shit, because they're like, if I die, I just keep everything anyway, and I'm just going to risk my GP coffer money, so I don't really care.
I also want to
So
say,
you got
like,
more people. Yeah.
Sorry. All I was going to say is also what we're accounting for here is such an unfathomably small fraction of people, right? Like, it's Iron Men with main accounts who have a lot of disposable income that want to also feed it for wilderness risk content. Like, that is like 0.1% of Iron Man.
Niche of a niche,
yeah. It's like we are essentially like limiting the scope of the wilderness to account for like exploiting kind of that can be done by the smallest fraction of the smallest fraction of a player base. That is just not worth ruining the game over, or making the game worse over, I should say.
And even if it is a large portion of it, like even if theoretically it was like everybody, it's like you can already do every single main can have another main that can fund their lower accounts coffer. It's like, again, the Iron Man cannot withdraw from this coffer. They are not benefiting. Their account is not being benefited by doing this. They still have to build up a whole fucking account. If you wanted an Iron Man to be like a PKer now, first of all, cool, but what the fuck is the point of it? One of the options, I guess one of the points could be, and this was something I failed to mention, was you could potentially have, if your coffer fills up enough as an Iron Man, you could maybe buy bonds that has like a connection to the GE. So you pay a certain amount of fee. Maybe it could even have an additional tax to it because you're an Iron Man or whatever. But I know right now Iron Man can actually use the Grand Exchange just to buy bonds alone. It could have
Yeah,
a
that
sort
would
of
be
connection
cool.
to that.
That would be cool. And also like that wouldn't have any issues with the exploitation argument we're just making because what are
Correct.
you're gonna be what feeding yourself bonds? That doesn't even make any sense. So like
Yeah.
why would so that would make totals be fine, I think.
It just people are worried that Iron Men can now go out and boss in whatever they want, and they're at risk. Okay, first of all, every fucking account can already do that. Every account can go in and risk whatever the fuck they want. So mains can go out and you can risk your full ancestral. People have this weird fear that like a high level Iron Man just have unlimited money on a main. If you were to go out on an Iron Man with like full Torva or whatever because you feel like, oh, now they can just risk whatever. As soon as you fucking die, you lost 800 mil from your fucking coffer, and some PKer just had the fucking week of their life right there. Or the moment of their life, I should say, just having the most incredible kill. Now what are you going to do? Like just fund up your coffer again with 800 mil? What the fuck are you talking about? No, you're still going to be reasonably risking whatever you're going to risk anyway. There's just a little bit more incentive to just risk a little bit more. So me going out there as an Iron Man, if I'm going to kill Ardio as an Iron, I am hyper vigilant about every fucking little thing I could lose because it's a devastating loss if I lose my crossbow or if I lose even like my fucking assembler, for example. Like if that's not Trover parts, I know they've kind of fixed that. I think on tradables now you just don't lose at all or something like that. Or something that's happening to the wilderness, which is a positive change. But there's like I'm hyper fixated on tiny little items losing because I'm seeing it as an hours thing. Like I do not want to go kill 50 more fucking Vorkath for a backpack. I don't want to do this for this. And it's like if it all just becomes a money thing, bro, I'm just gonna roll out with my God D hide because I only had one pair of God D hide and I'm just too scared to risk it. So I'm not gonna risk it. But now I just like fuck it. I'll risk this. It's worth 500 mil on or 500k on the Grand Exchange. I'll risk it. So now it's literally more incentive for a PKer to kill you. You're not having this devastating feeling of just losing that rare clue scroll item that you brought. I remember having Ranger boots on me, and I was like, fuck, it'd be kind of cool to wear Ranger boots out to Ardio instead of these fucking snakeskin boots. But just like drastically, not even like it increased my risk because I'm still protecting, 3 or 4 items. It just made it so my backpack would be lost. So it's like those little micro changes that completely become non-issues with this new coffer system because everything is just GP related. If I died to Ardio, if I died to a PK or at Ardio, I respawn with every fucking thing on me still. Boom, I'm back in, and I just lost a little bit of money. The PKer just instantly loots that key. They're out. They got 10% more than they actually killed. It's like a fucking win-win across the board. And it's just everything becomes more simple, streamlined, and just fun.
Mm-hmm. No, I wouldn't disagree with that. It definitely incentivized me to do my Void Waker grind more so than it is right now. And the main reason I'm not particularly interested in doing it right now is because it's just tedious when you get ganked and then I have to park up an alt and I'm just too lazy, frankly. Like it's literally just like a thing of like it's just so many different small inconveniences stacking up for me that I don't care. Like frankly, like I would sacrifice every single common drop if I could just do a private instance because of how much inconvenience there is to just like set everything else up. So it's like one of those things where this would alleviate that enough, I think, for me, for sure.
And think about this. You bring up these. Think about the multi bosses if you're going for the Void Waker. Right now, if you die, if I were to go kill Vedion with a few friends and we just got, totally owned by a team of 10 that just dropped in on us, I respawn with nothing on my fucking body. I've lost all my shit. And then I'm like just trying to think to myself, okay, what the fuck did I even lose? Okay, how do I re-gear? Okay, I got to go get my salve amulet back. God damn it, I lost my Artie cloak or whatever. Let me just go get a few more of those. All this fucking bullshit that you're dealing with. And then you finally go out there with your friend, and your friends are like, I'm just done. Like, this sucks. I don't want to re-gear and everything. If it's the case that you just died, you got 10 men jump in, kill you, one guy and 9 of his boyfriends jump in and kill you, you can now respawn. Everything is still on you. You have only lost the GP value of what you're risking. And you could just go right back in there and have some fucking fun. And if, let's just say you were in a 3-man team and 3 more people came down, but you're in like a 3-man Iron Man team and 3 mains come down and they look pathetic and they're wearing Zarashins and shit, fucking fight back. Because even if you just linger there and die anyway, you're just going to respawn with all your shit regardless. So you're good. You barely lose any time. And you get to fight back. So instead of it being this nonstop mouse chase where it's like, players, run through the caves, run through the caves, don't have any interaction, keep getting frozen for 30 fucking seconds repeatedly. It's just, no, I'm going to fight you, motherfucker. Like, I'm going to fight you and I'm going to try to get money in my coffer now. Like, the tables have fucking turned. And I think this is going to create a super fun dynamic where there's not this immense fear of seeing a player. It's like, oh, fuck it. I'm just going to lose a little bit of money from my coffer. No skin off my, back. I'm just like, brush off the dust. I respawn back in Ferox. I'm just back in the action. I lost a little bit of GP. That's cool. Or I killed the guy and I get a loot key and I'm just going to dump it into my coffer. And boom, I have a little bit more money to risk now.
Yeah,
It's just
no,
going
I
to
agree with
create
that.
a much more exciting, engaging, and interactive experience. And you can like shit talk each other and just like, because Iron Men are going to be attacking and encouraged to attack others.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Anything to get Iron Man to like not feel like they're literally wasting their life doing anything in the wilderness other than just that PvE content would be a huge step up, because frankly, you don't want the wilderness to only be about PvE content. That's stupid. Or PvM content. That's
Yeah.
really stupid. And for Iron Man, it's like 30 odd percent of the player base feels like they're wasting their life engaging in the actual purpose of the wilderness, even though they're still incentivized to engage with the wilderness. It's really weird. It's a bad dynamic, and it extends specifically to Iron Man, but of course, everybody who doesn't just PvP gets this feeling in some ways. So having a way to alleviate that is 100%. I'm 100% in support of that, no questions asked, for sure.
Yeah, and what I'm loving seeing is this is not just a fringe idea, especially anymore. I mean, I in the original days of talking about it, it wasn't even ironed out properly, so there was like some issues with it. These days, pretty much all the loose ends are tied up, and JMods are now seeing it. I mean, again, I'm not going to just leak everything, but like Mod Manked is really actually taking an effort into this idea. I think he is actually working on implementing something similar to this, and he's trying to figure out what could work, what couldn't work. Again, I don't think that's necessarily like leaking anything. I'm just keeping it very, very vague. But I'm all that to say this is getting traction. PKers are understanding it. People are watching this. People are understanding. We want a change in the wilderness. We want things to be fun. We want interaction. We want fighting back. We want encouragement and incentive for all players to engage and just have fun. It's not just a run for your life in every goddamn situation where you see a player because there's zero incentive to fight back. It's terrible right now.
Yeah, I would be very interested to see how players react to it. I can't imagine the player base being like, no wilderness, when in reality this is just making things better for them. It's more convenient, it's less frustrating. You'd think that people would be more positive about that if they're already negative about the wilderness, right? Like if there's someone who was know on every wilderness update, this I feel could be an easy sell for them. But I never know. Honestly, I never know with how players react to some stuff. So very interested to see that. I wanna
Mm-hmm.
The last like main big topic I want to broach with you here on this show is is more skilling centric, because you're a big skiller, right? Like while you kind of
Yeah.
touch on all the topics, I think skilling is something that, correct me if I'm wrong, is something near and dear to your heart. I remember watching, like I think I learned a lot of like the tick methods just from watching your big long like 2-hour videos of you doing that. If I remember, you uploaded some of those like years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so skilling is close to your heart. And I want to start this topic by just asking you, what makes a good skill in old school RuneScape? If you had to like summarize that idea.
Um, Engaging method that's actually fun and profitable and worth your time. Um, and then has nice rewards and reasonable and interesting unlocks going forward. So I think those are the metrics to gauge whether it is. Are you trying to get an example of what a skill does it quite well?
Well, I just want to get an idea of like what you value out of those the most, right? Like, so would you take
Yeah.
an efficient good method over a good output? Would you take a good output, like output being like a reward, not just GP, but like, for example, like the portal nexus is a great output
Mm-hmm.
from construction, right? Like, would you take that over an engaging method? Like, where are your values? Because I think something for me
Yeah.
that I've realized is that my values for what equates to a good skill are very much not aligned with some people's values for what a good skill is in RuneScape. And that was a very interesting realization I had when I was having that big Twitter discourse. Is like I realized that a lot of people that are especially in the end game of skilling just don't have the same values as I do, like the things I care about for a skill. So I'm just curious to hear yours because I know you are a big skiller.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I want, and this more coincides with active gathering skills and other sort of skills like thieving and agility. If it's like a skill like herb lore or something where it's just kind of like a bank standing skill, or construction where it just feels a little bit different, where you're just kind of like pimping out and getting cool uh, things in your POH, that's a little bit different. But when I think of a skill, for example, like agility is one that's obviously talked a lot in the community. Right now, it's a very hot topic. Just like what the hell is going on with agility? What has been going on with it? Um, you know, I think it was Mod Arcane again in that conversation you had, which is just talking about like Sepulchre is amazing, but after level 92. So have fun grinding whatever the fuck garbage it is before that. And in my view, it's like, okay, there's a few different branching things I have right now in my head. So I'm trying to think of which one to talk about first. We need to make agility just more interesting. One of the things I fucking hate is watching a new player. When we saw that huge WoW influx of players coming in, it was embarrassing for me. It was a secondhand embarrassment of going into a WoW stream and watching them do Varrock rooftops. I'm just like, dude, this is terrible. This is a terrible experience, terrible first impression of the game. And this is the kind of shit that you have to deal with. It's like multiple hours of just failing repeatedly with nothing you can do about it, just failing the fucking course halfway through, running back and then walking because you don't even have the run energy to maintain it. So you're just walking this goddamn rooftop, the shittiest animations of all time. Every time you're about to jump over a fucking ledge to the next roof, you pause there for 2 seconds and then make the leap. Like, what are we doing here? Like, this whole thing looks like it's terrible. I'm sorry. Like this, and I understand the devs had zero resources when they made this shit, but all this stuff needs to be adjusted massively. It's just a terrible stain on the game, it looks like. I mean, you're entering different planes of existence in one obstacle. You're jumping from an obstacle, you lower 2 planes down, then you raise another plane, then you raise another plane. All the players disappear, everything disappears again, reappears, then disappears again, then reappears. It's like, what the fuck is this? This is jank as hell. This is like some broken game looking. Like, we've all accepted it, of course, because this is what we've dealt with for the last decade plus. But it's a terrible experience. Some people, yes, can start loving anything. Like, literally, you can give them sulfur mining, and people will be like, I like sulfur mining. Sulfur mining is pretty chill. I enjoy it. It's objectively a piece of shit thing to do, sulfur mine. Have anybody ever sulfur mined? Nobody does it anymore, thank God. But there's these fucking NPC clouds that just get in you and start hitting you twos on repeat. Just terrible experience. So anyway, all that said, can we just make fun courses? That's a possibility, actually. There's a variety of different things you could do. I mean, I'm just going to try to illustrate clearly how I could see a really engaging agility course that would be early on. You could do it at level 30 or something, and then there'd be another, element of the course, maybe an intermediate version at level 50, and another higher level one at level 70 or something. But imagine a course similar to the Ninja Warrior series. If you ever watched that, where it's like
Yeah.
people, it's like Wipeout, something like that, where you're jumping on these new obstacles. You have like one station here where you're jumping across, 5 different red balls and with like swinging things, and it's all clickbox based. So this is not a Sepulchre free running thing, but so it's like a hybrid of like Sepulchre and Rooftops, where Rooftops is just click the next clickbox. This would be clicking clickboxes in a certain timing. So let's just say you're looking at the course. Here you are. You have 6 different stations. You run to the first station. It is just a bunch of stepping stones. You one tick the stepping stones. Boom, 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 boom. You passed it. Okay. Station number 2, you run to it. It's just a few ticks away. You run over to the next station, and it's like a rock wall. So the rock wall is, it has like 10 stones. You scaling up this wall, and they're just click boxes. You click one handle, you click the next handle, you click one handle, click the next handle. But this one now is alternating 1 tick, 2 tick. So one of the handles is close, and then the next one is up, and then you have to wait 1 tick before you click the next one. If you click too rapidly, you slip and fall. Everything is just a pattern. So you go there, boom, 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 boom. You're scaled up. Boom, that's all it is. And you're now on to the next obstacle up on the roof, and you're going to maybe swing down this thing. And so you got to click the rope. Then you got to click the next rope on a certain timing. You're seeing the animations of your guy swinging on a rope, jumping to the next one, and clicking at the right timing. Maybe it's every 3 ticks or something. But it's super, super simplistic, super engaging. The animations are fucking on point. And if you ever miss that tick, you slip and fall and you got to restart that station again. You move on to the next one. It's just another click box thing where you're just kind of clicking every 2 ticks or something. It's like a 2-tick jumping thing. And what would also be cool is if like the higher level you get, maybe there is a station that is a 1-tick stepping stone like Yama, but now you're level 80 agility or something, and now you can skip over stones. So you're watching all the noobs skip, or skipping one stone at a time, boom, 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 and you're double jumping it because you can now. You have that opportunity to speed up the course because you've developed this new technique. And instead of clicking on the handlebars every 1-tick, 2-tick, now you can actually just leap to the next one because your guy's agile enough to just skip over it. So the stations kind of become more interactive the higher level you get to, and everything is just clickbox. So it's super fucking simple, but there is a lot of pattern recognition to it. You have to understand the patterns. And then of course I've just illustrated the simple stations. You could have a station that has axes being thrown in between jumping these ledges. So you need to visually see where the axes are, and then it's just maybe it's like a 1-tick, 2-tick, and then wait, a tick or something, and then 1-tick, 2-tick, or something like that. Mm-hmm. It could have some visual elements where there is a little bit more engagement, just recognizing in real time what's happening. But for the most part, I want things to be static and clear and simplistic and engaging the whole time. So you mentioned something actually, and then I'll let you respond, of you don't like any sort of method where it takes like more than 6 seconds of AFKing, where you're just sitting there watching something, you're just waiting for something to happen. Rooftops, you mentioned, was an example of that. This would be full activity the whole time. I mean, you're just running to the next station over and over and over. And then by the end of the course, if you complete it in a certain amount of time, maybe there would just be some records that you can set. And I mean, it could be a pretty long route. It could be like a full-on 3-minute whole station thing that you're just running through. And then at the end, you get a little loot sack or something, or you get a little buff to something. And it would just be a super engaging course that would actually just be fun, and you're racing your friends, and there's like little slip-ups, and you see your friend fail one of the handholds because he fucked up. It's not just some RNG element where it's like, oh, but 80% of the time you're gonna successfully pass it, and 20% of the time you're just gonna fall for no reason whatsoever. There's just gonna be a lot of fun and a lot of like enjoyment racing other people and stuff. Most people will have Entity Hider most likely on, and there could be some instances, I guess, if you wanted to deal with that. But again, this is one example of a course that's simplistic. It's not sepulcher level difficulty. It's easy for everybody to get into, but you will fail your first few times because you just won't understand the patterns until you've done it like 10 or 20 times.
Yeah, I'm always very much for like I've always advocated that agility would benefit greatly from an in between of rooftops and sepulcher. Like I'm always been such a big advocate of that because sepulcher is incredibly high skill cap. And frankly, it doesn't feel particularly rewarding unless you're breaching its skill cap. Like Sepulcher isn't particularly awesome when you're getting 80k an hour learning it, because you could be getting 10k less for like 50 times less effort. But when you're hitting like 95k, 100k, then that's when some of the value really comes in with how fast things are going. And obviously on top of that, it's fun, right? It's so much more fun than just regular rooftops. And you've pointed out how regular rooftops struggle to be not horrible in many ways, and I've always been thinking about ways to fix this without just reworking them outright. Like I would love to see just a QOL pass on rooftops where, as you pointed out, there's not those annoying delays between everything, right? Like instead of just like standing there for 2 ticks whenever you're about to do an objective or an obstacle, why not just have it do it instantly? Why not being able to move instantly as you finish an objective? Why not speed up objectives the higher your agility is? Why can't it so you start your Canifis rooftops, by the time you're midway through that 10 level bracket of rooftop, there could be a break point where you start doing it, if 30% faster, the objectives are faster because you're essentially like, getting better at agility, the skill. Like I think agility needs to feel like you're actually benefiting in some way. That's the output of the skill, right? And I want there to be more meta progression in that regard. But before I even get to that part, I just want to add that like right now, one of the issues that I pointed out with agility is that there's not enough room between rooftops and sepulcher. And people say, well, hold on, rooftops are 70k already, but sepulcher is 100k, maybe even more if you're really good at it. But like, that's not the reality. The reality of Sepulcher is that the vast majority of players aren't doing 100k hours at Sepulcher. They're doing like 85 to 90k hours at Sepulcher. And at that point, it's like that's where the issue comes in. Like if they add a new method between Artie and Sepulcher that's 85k or 80k for that level of activity you were outlining there, that would cannibalize Sepulcher even more than it's already being cannibalized. So that's the only reason I ever advocate for buffing Sepulcher even a little bit, is because I want there to be more space to have these intermediate activities. I don't care, and just before people start calling me out, I don't care agility slow. I've never advocated that a skill should be faster just for the sake of that I'm bored of it. I advocate for skills to be have more diverse training methods, and if there's an issue with incentivizing the developers to create those methods, then we need to create that incentive or offer suggestions such as either buffing Sepulcher or something else entirely. Like as I pointed out in the Twitter discourse, if as extreme as this sounds, even if it means nerfing rooftops by 30%, that alone would incentivize Sepulcher more, right? Like as crazy as that sounds for people. So like that's one.
In my
Second,
view, Sepulcher is just to touch on that, and I'll let you continue.
No, of course.
Sepulcher, if it was just floor 5 was level 85 to enter, floor 4 was level 80, floor 3 was level 75, floor 2 was level 70, and floor 1 was level 65. I know it's a little bit clamping on both ends, but most of the time you're probably around 60 agility anyway when you complete Sins of the Father, which is all the huge requirement to even get to Sepulcher. That solves a lot of things. Being able to enjoy the full experience of Sepulcher from level 85 to 99, so like literally 75% of the skill would be way more enjoyable currently as is. And I'll let you kind of share some more before I jump into more beef.
No. I'm not disagreeing, and I think that is a solution that they can take is by lowering the Sepulcher standards or entry rate for sure.
Let me also say this. I mean, I think you're being a little unfair when you claim, Artie's 70k, and then let's be honest, Sepulcher, nobody's actually getting 100k. They're getting more like 80k. Well, nobody's really getting 70k at Artie anyway. Most people are casually doing it. They're getting like 50k or less sometimes. And then before you're even level 96, you're failing here and there. So it's literally impossible to even maintain 70k before 96 unless you're pie boosting 91 plus and always keeping that maintenance, because 96 is when you stop failing Artie. So you got Artie 70k. Most people are not getting 70k unless you're just absolutely tick perfect the entire time, which you easily can. That's for sure. But you can also easily get better at Sepulcher. You know what? One thing in Sepulcher I would love to see is them just drastically speed up the looting of stuff. Like the grappling over to the thing and then getting poisoned twice on a chest, which if you have a strange old lockpick, you should never fail those chests, looting them. You just instantly get it. If they would just speed up all that stuff, that would feel a lot better too. I think they just spend too much time with this like loading up, moving to the center tile, grappling, and then spending, 5 seconds watching the grapple animation, then pausing there and you're stuck to the ground for another tick.
Frankly, this applies, by the way, to the vast majority of agility. If they just sped up half the fucking time you're spending watching animations, agility would just feel better as a skill. Like, I just want to clarify once again, even if that means adjusting experience rates to not be higher than they are right now, even if that's what that means, I would still want that 100 out of 100 times. Just like make it less annoying animations and that are janky and annoying to look at. I rather just do the thing. Like, let me do that, even if it means getting less like, moment to moment experience. Like, that's always been my perspective about it. Like, the big problem with agility is not that it's a slow skill, it's that it doesn't give enough tangible output. And the vast majority of it is hyper monotonous because you're barely even playing the game. And finally, when you unlock the ability to play the game, thank you, Jagex, at 92 agility, it feels oftentimes, I feel, for a lot of players, like it's not worth the squeeze at that point.
They're just exhausted.
Yeah, they're exhausted. And of course, the people that are even pushing that agility, that for those players, it might be, right? Because you're doing it, what's considered the worst skill in the game, from 92 to 99, and literally getting nothing but experience out of it. You're really not getting anything from getting 99 agility in old school RuneScape. And that's the second aspect of agility for me, where like I wish there was a more of an incentive to get not 99, because I know 99 is just supposed to be a cosmetic thing, but like to push it higher. Like that to me is really like a great example is construction, right? My favorite skill in the game, where I was hyper incentivized to max it because the construction cape is fucking awesome. Like the utility the construction cape gives you feels
Yep.
so good. And that's after I already maxed my player on house, which you can do earlier than 99, right? With all the boosts and stuff. So like that alone incentivized me. Agility, I'm incentivized by the idea of maxing because I want to make a video on it. But like that's it. Like 99 agility doesn't give it. Your run energy regen doesn't even scale after 90. Like what the fuck? Like why? Like if I'm going even crazier with it for a moment, at 99 agility after you spend 300 hours doing what is considered the slowest and most annoying skill in the game, you should get infinite run energy. Like as crazy as that's, I know that's crazy. Maybe just in the overworld, maybe not an instance content because that's its own separate thing, right? But like that alone would incentivize people just in overworld content, not in Cox or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I think like I can appreciate that, and I think it makes more sense from a. By the way, would you have to wear the cape?
I mean, that's the way to balance it. I would say no, because by that point it's like, dude, like, and again, just for overworld, we're not talking Inferno or Cox or anything, but just in the overworld. Like I think that.
But even I mean, I would even say like it should be the opposite. So this is where I will push back because I actually heard this as well. Is because most of the time, especially in that conversation with you and Mod Arcane, you guys were talking about like how basically nobody's really using Stamina's late game anyway. It's like, yeah, maybe you bring one or something, but you guys are very focused on the PVM side of things. You do have things like Herbivore. You have things like Blast Furnace. You have things like rune crafting where people are drinking Staminas and stuff. So it's like, you have these places where Staminas actually legitimately do have a use and should continue to have a use. And I think it is a healthy thing for the game to have run energy. But you're right. I mean, I think there should be a pretty sharp scaling from 90 to 99 a little bit more because, again, if just the fact that it stops at 90 is just insanity. I do think that by 90 to 99, I would be okay if it was even like a doubling of the amount of time you have to run. So it's like a super huge surge. And again, this would not just be 90 to 99, but just across the skill, having it really scale up quite nicely, I think would be a benefit.
I'm kind of curious.
Even be,
sorry.
I'll say this one last thing and I'll let you share your thoughts is even one more thing they could do, even if it wasn't actually scaling how long your run energy lasts, make it so the higher level you get, the less weight is affecting you. And I think there already is an element of that, potentially. I'd have to look at the wiki and see all the details of it. But make that extreme where, like, when you're level 99 agility, I mean, weight should really just not even affect you hardly at that point. So your run should still drain, but if you're wearing if you have a full fucking inventory of, like, all these different armor sets because you're doing, like, a CM and your weight is fucking, like, 90 kilograms on you, like that should basically be seen as like zero. Like it should act as if you're kind of wearing a graceful set at that point. So you're not getting rid of the whole point of staminas, but if you're 99 agility, your weight basically isn't meaning anything in terms of run energy.
Yeah, I wonder, like, the only thing I'd say is that, like, I feel like if you have the attrition to get 99 agility, something that it's the least popular, or no, is it Runecraft, I think, before agility, but they're very similar. To get 99, I feel like you deserve to not use staminas anymore. That's my hot take. Like, it's like, bro, like, you've been using them for such a long time, take. Probably. Yeah, but you know, at the end of the day, regardless of what it is, it needs to be better than what it is right now. Not in the speed. I'm okay with how slow agility is. It just needs to be better in the reward for achieving what is such an obnoxious experience for a lot of players. And I was racking my brain on how to make agility feel a little bit more rewarding, because right now it's literally just your run energy slightly gets better. The biggest difference is between 1 and 50, frankly. You get your graceful there too, which has a lot less uses now because of the run energy rework they did last year. And that's kind of it. Like, the shortcuts, I guess, are kind of nice. There's maybe like a handful of them that I even think about, frankly. And a lot of them are just really slow and annoying too. And I was thinking about this, and, you know, this is a hot take, maybe just because I'm bringing up RS3, but something that RS3 did that I thought I kind of clued into, I'm like, this is kind of interesting, because a part of OSRS and RuneScape in general that I think a lot of people love is how skills interconnect with one another. And agility, frankly, doesn't really do that other than benefit your run energy regen on training methods in certain environments. Um, RS3 did this thing where your agility level benefits your thieving in that you have a chance of stealing double or more of something based on your agility level, which I'm sitting there, I'm like, that's kind of a creative thing to do. Like, it's not crazy, it's not overpowered, but like the higher your agility level, the higher chance you have of stealing more when you're thieving. And that's a cool kind of connection. I never thought of thieving and agility as being synergetic, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, it would make sense for them thematically to be, right? Because you're agile in as a thief, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
No, I mean, I think just in my view, a better suggestion is something I saw on Reddit. It stems perfectly with what you're saying. Is instead of getting double loot, you're just taking less damage when you get
Yeah.
stunned. So
Yeah.
that was the solution I thought was brilliant, because you're not actually you could still just be a thief, and just have one agility and still be getting the loot that you're expecting to get, and you're not feeling like you're at a disadvantage because somebody has 99 agility and you're just looting more. But and it's not even speeding up anything. It's just for convenience sake. One of the annoying things is when all those high level NPCs are hitting you fives over and over.
Yeah.
It's not actually slowing anything down if you just bring Phoenix necklaces and regen pots. You're pretty much good. But if you just were taking ones at level 90 agility or something instead of fives, that would be fucking brilliant. That would be a huge encouragement for people to just do that. And especially like early game, I see early game accounts, they're like 70 thieving and they're trying to get some seeds from Master Farmer, but you're taking threes repeatedly and you don't have the luxuries of all these nice things like dodgy necklaces and all this other stuff. It's like but if you had high agility and you were encouraged to do it, and now you're only taking ones or maybe even like 0.5s, and so it's like you're hitting ones and then zeros occasionally, that would be a huge incentive. And it's not breaking anything, it's just making it more convenient for you. So there is one thing there.
And I would agree with that. I think like just having these small buffs that agility could give you as a support skill. That's what agility is, right? It's a support skill. Being able to give you like these small little buffs to certain other skills that are also kind of nice. That to me would kind of give more place for agility as a satisfying thing to get up, because now you're just noticing it impact other skills in a satisfying manner, instead of just being as breakpoint heavy as it is right now. I would love that, because frankly, the more I think about it, as skills in OSRS, for as critical of some of them as I am, the vast majority of them, they don't need reworks. They just need some tuning, right? Like they just need some small changes, like make rooftops not have those crazy delays. Like that alone would make the skill more fun to do, like less obnoxious and frustrating to do, right? Like make some courses a little bit faster, even if it doesn't mean, not experience rate wise, just from like you playing the game, like make things less jittery and janky and stiff, because we love when RuneScape feels smooth, right? That's why a lot of people love tick manipulation. That's why a lot of people love Sepulcher, because it feels smooth to do. You don't feel like you need to stop and jitter and jank your way through it. Just that's the kind of stuff to me that would benefit these skills. Like there was a time where I would fully want a rework for agility or fully want a rework for runecraft. Even now, I think a lot of developers want to rework runecraft. I'm like mixed on that idea, where I'm like, I don't know. Like I think there's some ways we can fix runecraft to not feel like it needs a full rework. I would say the only skill in the game that I would promote a full rework for, outside of just a thought experiment, is like smithing, because I don't think you can QOL smithing. It just fundamentally doesn't work right now. But beyond that, like I really feel like most skills in this game just need some most problematic skills that a lot of people dislike just need a little bit of a tweak here and there to make them a little bit more exciting to get up as a new player.
Yeah. I'm pretty much totally with you. I think the big thing as well is just having fun, engaging courses that are actually interactive. Still an option to do. You don't have to do it, but the fact that you are basically forced to do the exact same cookie cutter rooftop shit. Every single fucking course is a rooftop besides Sepulcher. Literally every single one, besides, I guess, Brimhaven. Brimhaven is terrible in
Hey,
some
hey,
ways
hey,
as
hey,
well.
hey,
And
hey,
some
hey, hey,
people,
hey, hey, hey.
what?
Wolf ball, skull ball, wolf. Man,
Skullball, yeah.
mode.
Skullball
Yeah.
needs to be cranked up like 4x the XP right now.
Yeah,
But
I
even
know,
then,
right?
Skullball is just terrible. Nobody would want to do that even if it was
No,
good. Just
they do not.
horrible experience.
Yeah.
The most clunky, just sticky thing ever. But I want to just cross this by you as well because there's many ideas I've had over the years of agility things. One of them was like the if you ever watch the Aladdin cartoon, like the Cave of Wonders
Mhm.
thing, where like Aladdin and his little monkey go down, or Apu, is that his name? He
Yeah.
goes down in the little Cave of Wonders, and he's going in there. He loots the lamp at the end, and then he has to leave before the cave crumbles. And I have always been a huge fan of this idea. I think having a desert themed Cave of Wonders where there is a global start for it. So it would be run on certain worlds only, maybe like 10 or so worlds, and everybody loads up and every game starts in like 3 minutes. So you have like maybe 2.5 minute run. You got like, efficiently you could probably get to the lamp in like a minute and then leave in a minute. And then there's also urns on the side, and you're basically all enter at the exact same time. So this whole world, this massive ants, just run into this new, cool, shiny sort of pyramid plunder-esque vibe room that feels like a little bit milder of a floor 5 sepulcher, probably like maybe like a floor 3-ish skill level. But you're just running through, and there's a bunch of fun obstacles, little falling boulders and stuff. And any obstacle that hits you, you just die and you're out. So you're watching people drop like flies, basically. But it's easy enough that if you're competent and you've done it for a few hours, you're good enough to go get it. You go get the lamp, and then you can start spending time looting urns if you feel like you have enough time to leave in time. But then you escape the cave, you rub the lamp, you get some thieving XP and you get some agility XP. And that's basically the extent of it. And then you wait for the next thing to start in like, 30 seconds. And then everyone runs in again, does the same thing, and runs out. And it would be this nice, like, mass activity where you're running in there and just having the fucking time of your life, watching people drop, watching people fail. And there's also a race, so you want to be the fastest to get the lamp. Maybe there's a little bit of a bonus XP because it's on limited worlds, so you couldn't just take advantage of being on an empty world. You'd have to be on these more kind of like global ones. And you run down, and then you kind of got like a thieving and an agility mini game going on at the same time. You're getting loot, getting XP, and you're all just starting at the same time. So it's not an instanced vibe, and everything is static. I think that static nature, I mean, yes, there could be some falling boulders that are a little different, so it keeps you on your toes. But for the most part, people like it when Sepulcher has a static start when you start the floor, They
Yeah.
hate it when you enter something and everything's already rolling because some guy entered previously, So if you have that perfect start time, everyone goes at the same time. There's that race to get there. Maybe there's even some like speed boosts. You jump on a magic carpet. If you're the first one on the magic carpet, you get like a little speed boost, and you're like
Yeah.
flying in. Cool shit like that. And then I have one more thing I want to cross by you, and I'll let you respond. Have you ever seen those YouTube? I've seen this on YouTube, like some shorts of. It's almost like they're at an arcade or something. It's like a real life thing. Like they're in a room with like a light up floor that you have to avoid the lights. So there's like a kid in there running around, and there's like lights on the wall that they're like trying to press, but they also don't want to have their feet touch these lights that shine. So it's like this sort of interactive, like agile real life mini game kind of
Yeah.
thing that you're in this like locked room. I don't know if anybody in the audience knows what I'm talking about, or if you do. What if they
I
were
know
to
what you're talking
add?
about.
Okay, so what if they were to add a? I'm thinking of the Hunliff room. Imagine Hunliff's out of there. There's just a grid that's perfectly, like tile marked and everything. Like it just looks like a nice solid grid. And the whole this is an agility mini game. The whole thing is dodging lights. So you have these lights coming down at you and like crisscrosses and stuff. And all you have to do is make sure your true tile never touches these lights coming at you. So the whole thing is this interactive light puzzle, basically, that just keeps the floor keeps lighting in different ways. And there's always a way to dodge it. And it's always perfectly static. So there would be different levels of it. You go to level 1, and it would have a certain light pattern. And it would go for like a couple minutes or something. And it's pretty simple. Just dodge it. I'm sure, within a few days, RuneLight would have a nice little solve where it's like, yeah, just click back and forth here and here, whatever. That's okay. But then you get to level 2 and level 3 and level 4. And then you get to like the very last levels where this thing gets fucking chaotic. And maybe it's endless. Maybe it just keeps progressing. So you have this insane light floor puzzle, and you're watching like somebody like Port Kazard running this thing, and it just looks like a fucking clusterfuck of lights everywhere. But he has perfectly solved this because he's run it for hours and hours and hours. And it's just this super fun thing where you're training agility in this super agile, interactive way where you're dodging floor lights the whole time. And there could even be some little pillars that spawn up and you got to press them. So it's not just like you can always have a perfect solve by just standing in the corner and just kind of knowing exactly the timing. But there would be some interactive things that are a little bit more randomized that you can interact with if you want for additional XP. So it's like, here's a pillar here, click it really quick, but try to dodge the lights as well. Just that sounds so simplistic to make. Ultimately, you just have to have some interesting patterns, like geometric patterns kind of that come down, sort of like the Yama flames and stuff. Like have something that feels rhythmic, feels like there's a set pattern to it, but there's also visual indicators that make it fair. But you're also going to be constantly failing, but you learn over time and time. So the more hours you put into it, the more of a Giga Chad you look to like the average person. You just run in there and like people are like, how the fuck are you dodging all this stuff?
It's
that would be an amazing thing.
You bring this up, right? Because like it's cool because what they can do with that, with what the platform, the design you're outlining here, is teach players about certain mechanics of the game that are kind of arcane without plugins, right? Like things like True Tile. Like how do you explain to a new player what True Tile is without just showing them the plugin, right? But in this environment where everything is in a CGS grid, where think of it this way, the tile you're on could be lit up. So when you're running, you could visually see that the tile ahead of you is lighting up before your model's in front of it. That teaches them that, there is some kind of thing happening here with the game engine, right? That I otherwise would not have understood. Like that alone gives reason and value for that, something like that existing, without just being like, hey, True Tile exists, this is how it works. Like that I like that idea alone just for that. But yeah, I love that idea of like creating this ever increasing difficult boss room where the only thing you're doing is just perfecting your movement in this like arena, right? With like increasing obstacles and stuff. Yeah, I think all that stuff, not only does that not feel like it would require the amount of dev time Sepulcher did, because Sepulcher had 5 floors of completely unique puzzles and all this kind of stuff. This would require like one room of just adjusting and AoEs that don't damage you. Like that alone could have so much more value to players. And I feel it's one of those things to me that should be available at like level 25. And it could just scale up to like 50, 75 based on the difficulty and stuff, kind of like Sepulcher. But like, this is the kind of stuff that I want to see new players experience with the game that could be really fun for them. And it would also give players new players, I should say, this ability to get used to the way the movement in the game works and the delay of movement in the game. Like one of the biggest like quitting points, I think, for players is immediate, because they're like, I don't like this 600 millisecond delay. It's really janky. It's really annoying. It feels laggy for a lot of players that aren't used to it. But when you get used to it, it's second nature. So by giving them the ability to get used to it early on, by giving them exciting rewards and good experience on X, Y, and Z thing, you would be able to like really ingratiate players into something like this. I think it's a W idea. I would love to see stuff like that. And I think agility as a support skill, not just to other skills, but just to playing the game, is such an interesting thing to do with agility. That's not just reworking the skill or adding another rooftop course. Like, oh guys, the worm course, it's like rooftops, but slightly slower. Like, wow. Like, I just, there's so much more potential there. And I guess that's always been my attitude for skills that I dislike. And I sometimes maybe phrase this in a provocative way, sometimes not even intentionally, but, like there's just missed opportunity, I think. Like a skill like Hunter is beloved by a lot of players. I personally don't like it that much. And one of the main reasons is there's just missed opportunities for these skills. There's a way to make these skills so much cooler. And we've seen this with skills of Jagex just honing in on a really cool idea. I think you and I both love Veil Totems for this. It's like what an awesome way to integrate fletching into the game. That's not just standing around fletching arrows. Like what a great thing. And that's just what I want to see with skills, like these kinds of cool expansions to give utilities and to them. So yeah, I completely agree with you there, 100%.
Yeah, and just further thoughts on agility. I mean, one of the things I'm really despising is their quality of life, quote unquote, updates, where it's like, oh, we're gonna fix this little stepping stone shortcut across, the Champions Guild over at the Drainer Manor. We just turned it into 1 stone, and you could still fail it over and over. Like I literally went there the day they changed it. I fucking failed it 4 times in a row at level like 80 agility.
Yeah, like why?
I don't know what the hell they did with it, but it's like before you had to jump every 4 stones and you had to wait 3 ticks each, and there was a chance you slip. If they would have just kept those stones, or even added, in longer river distances, just add more stones to it. And it's like, but even that, in that example, 4 stones, if you could just Yama jump it, boom, 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 and there's no slipping, that shit would feel amazing. Like, it's so fucking easy. It's so easy. It's so just brilliant. And they don't do it. They dumb it down to the stupidest level. And there's still that obnoxious waiting where you're like, jump, and then stall for a tick. And then you can start moving again. It's like, dude, speed the hell out of this.
That's exactly what I mean, right? With like, agility should feel like you're getting faster, not that you're just watching an animation. And right now it just feels like you're watching animations most of the skill. Like if a shortcut, a jumping over a wall shortcut, for example, instead of being 8 ticks of your character winding up, stepping back, running forward, going up, 2-tick delay when you land, like if it was just a 2-tick animation of you running up to the wall, grabbing it, going over, and like there's no delay on you continuing your movement, like that would make it, that alone makes agility so much better, because it feels like you're just like you're making the world your bitch, like it's really fun.
Yes.
And
yes,
unfortunately
the world becomes like a parkour playground where, and this is why I want more shortcuts added across the game. And I am so opposed, by the way, to achievement diary requirements added to shortcuts. Stop with that. Like, I know they pulled it and fucking, I don't know how the hell that failed. Like, people are like the KQ one is probably the biggest offender.
Yeah, but that's insane. The KQ one is crazy to me.
But even like nobody uses the shortcut, by the way. But like the one next to where you telegrab wines next between Taverley and
Falador.
Falador. I guess Falador, kind of like northern Falador, like that area has a shortcut. And nope, you can't do it until you have the Falador easy done, or Falador medium.
Why? I think Mad Season just stumbled on that one too, and he's like, "What? Like, why do I need a shortcut for this?" And he has like 77 agility in his account, so it's like, it's so dumb. Like, if anything, they maybe diaries lower the agility requirement of a shortcut. Maybe like that would be like an in between.
Yeah, I would even just say no. I'd just say just stop with anything that's affecting agility. Like, it's a goddamn shortcut. Like, just let us jump it.
It's already a low value skill. Like, we can exist in a world where it's not limited by achievement diaries, right? It's already a skill that's not it's not construction over here, okay? Like, we're talking a skill that slightly increases your run energy, okay? Like, let's not go too overboard with how impactful we think it is. So it's like I'm 100% in support of that, for 100%. Other than that, because I know I am unfortunately running out of time here, because I got to start waking up my girlfriend and we're going on movies today. But beyond that, I just want to, before I even thank you for being on, I want to ask you, like, what's coming up for you? Like, what are you working on? What are you looking forward to in the game? Like, what are your general takeaways there?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. This has just been I love talking with you. It's just great fun. And we're both very passionate, clearly.
100%.
So it's always fun. But for me, I mean, I'm obviously doing the Sae Bae Unnoted panel discussion type videos, which have been just a total blast for me. I've loved it. I've loved to see all the engagement and new people kind of subscribing and getting involved. And I think that's just been really fun. And also, in the next 2.5 weeks, I'm actually moving in with my girlfriend. I'm moving out to Colorado from Oregon. So, and she's a RuneScaper as well. She's got a maxed Iron Woman, and she is just lovely. And we are going to be playing a GIM together. She's already been playing it. I've been mainly focused on my hardcore, but as soon as we move in together, we'll start. And she's been recording clips as well. So we're going to have a little GIM series going on. I think Mudkip and Spookdog are the only ones right now with like a couple sort of GIM series. And I think we want to enter that scene. So I'm really excited for that. So the summer is just, I am thrilled, more than ever for this summer coming up to live with her. And then content wise though, still working on the hardcore series. Haven't been streaming as much, but I really am itching to start streaming the GIM. I haven't quite decided if they're going to be more like member exclusive streams or I'm going to go back to like just Twitch streaming and stuff. But I can definitely see that being a lot more of a streaming arc for me. So yeah, that's kind of what's on the table lately. So
Hell yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that sounds great. First, congratulations as well. And moving in, it's a big step. That's awesome. Wish you guys the best. And I'm excited to see the GIM stuff as well. Again, yeah, thank you so much for joining. It's always a blast to have a conversation. Love having conversation with people that are, really passionate about elements of the game. I like that we can completely disagree on something, but still have a great conversation about it. That's like my favorite. I
yeah,
love like people assume that I'm like someone who just wants everyone to agree. No, the opposite. My favorite conversations are always when people disagree with me. Like, when Mod Rice is like, no, you're wrong. I'm like, I'm locked in. Let's go. Like, I'm so excited. Like, I love that kind of stuff. So it's such a pleasure to have those kind of conversations. So I appreciate you humoring me in that regard, and hope to see you on down the line as well.
absolutely. Anytime, man. Thank you so much.
Great.